at the end of time.
O'clock.
Hey everybody, what's going on? It's July 5th. Hope everybody had a good Independence Day and everyone still has all their fingers. You know, poor Pookie hid under the bed all night.
Yeah, they were cutting them off over here.
Yeah, we have we have our own fireworks like in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
And Pookie was not having it. Like, Tom even tried to drag her out from under the bed and show her, like, look, it's okay. And she was just like, no! And she just, like, jumped out. She jumped out of his arms and, like, ran back under the bed. Fuck this shit.
You could see him from our back window. I picked her up and said, look at him. And she's like, ah! No. Yeah, I thought she was going to fucking scratch me up. Then she ran back underneath the bed and hid right under where I was laying on the bed.
Yeah, she's like...
Directly underneath Daddy.
Yeah.
It's like crazy. And I go down there and go, it's okay. And she goes, man. So come on out, man.
No.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah. And it was, all night.
Yeah. I mean, they kept going until... I don't remember because I fell asleep at like 10:30, but...
No, it was about 11, 12.
Yeah, okay. So I must have been really tired because I fell
but they
asleep.
just were kind of slowing down, popping every now and then.
Yeah.
As long as they were popping, she was underneath the bed.
Yeah.
She was underneath the bed. As soon as it got dark, it started popping.
Yeah. Poor little girl.
Yeah, she knows what it is. She hates them.
Yeah, she remembers from last
She remembers
year,
them.
I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so how's everybody doing on this Wednesday evening? I see that some people have already been commenting about my lovely thumbnail for this that has these two beautiful ladies on the pictures. I apologize for that. That'd be Mary Pearcey on the left there, and Pearcey, and that is Amelia Dyer on the right. Neither of which they're not going to be winning a beauty contest. Let's say it like that. Although there is something kind of interesting. We'll get into it in a minute when I talk about Mary Pearcey. But yeah, that picture of her, that's really the only one that I've ever seen. Like, I've seen another one online that purports to be of her, but to me it doesn't look like the same woman. Like, that other picture of that's supposedly of her, like, actually looks like a normal, like, decent looking woman. But you know what I mean? What are you doing?
Putting you in the camera.
No, it's okay. It's...
No, look.
Oh, all right. Well, whatever.
Half your damn face is in there.
Yeah. Well, I just thought it was like.
No,
it doesn't matter.
No, that's it.
See, because look.
Well, yeah. But I'm not looking at that. I'm looking at this. She wants to fight, people.
I'm not fighting. I'm just saying.
I'm looking at that.
I know, but usually it's just because that's under there. You know what I mean? Like under the chat thing. But yeah, so I don't know if that other picture is actually of her or not, because I find that hard to believe. Although in the other picture, like, her mouth is closed, so maybe that's because I kind of feel like that's what's causing a lot of the aesthetic kind of
making her ugly.
Yeah. I think that's what's causing that is like the teeth. But I don't know. It is like a kind of interesting thing about that. But like I said,
Jenny trying to be polite to a woman who's been dead for a long time. It's what made her look ugly, Jenny.
I wasn't trying to be polite. I was trying to be funny. It's funnier to me just like to say something like that. Like, you know what I mean?
Butt ass ugly.
Well, yeah, but that's easy
Got
to
a
say.
fucked up grill.
That's easy to say.
Yeah.
I always like to come up with something like kind of clever. That's what I was trying to do. I don't give a shit about. I mean, she's a murderer. I don't give a shit about being polite to her. And she's been dead for more than 100 years. So it's like, why the fuck would I care about that?
I couldn't understand it.
Well, yeah, you didn't understand it because I was like I said, I was just trying to make a joke.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a guy. I don't have that sense of humor.
No, you don't.
No.
Trey says, 4th of July antics were oddly calm in my neighborhood last night. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't loud, but, I mean, it was pretty loud for, like, an hour or so. But then, like, the sun didn't go down until almost 9 o'clock. So, Zach said, meanwhile, who took that picture of Amelia and why is it so awful? Yeah, I mean, that must have been taken... Because when did she get caught? I think she was 56 when she got caught. So that must have been... Maybe that's her mugshot, I feel like. Because there's another picture of Amelia Dyer, too, where she doesn't look quite that bad. And she looks, like, slightly younger, though. Because she was kind of caught more than once. You know what I mean? So I kind of feel like one was maybe an earlier photo. Let me see. Yeah, so I had to go back to work today too, so like a lot of people did. Yeah, Trey said it was all over by 10 here. People had to work today though. Yeah. I mean, half people didn't like show up, but you know.
They didn't show?
Well, no, I mean, I think some people had like taken today off or they had other shit to do, you know what I mean? Tammy said one of the perks of living in the middle of nowhere, very quiet here. Yeah. It, you know, like I said, it wasn't too bad. It was just, and they had mostly stopped by 10:30 because I was falling asleep by then. Because, by the way, we watched Megan last night.
Yeah, great flick.
And it was, well, I guess we'll probably do a review of it, like, this weekend or whatever. Because I saw that it was on Amazon Prime. I think it was on Amazon Prime for free. So I was like, oh, okay. I wanted to watch that. I saw an ad today, too, for Renfield. And I think it's streaming on Peacock. But I've fallen for that before. Where the ad says it's streaming on Peacock, but then you go on Peacock and it's like, oh, well, you can watch it, but you have to, like, subscribe to this other channel, you know what I mean? So I don't know if it's actually there or not, but I'll check, you know? Zach says that pic of Amelia was her entry photo into the asylum, according to Wikipedia. Yeah, that was another thing that she used to do, was, like, go into asylums all the time, which we'll get into in a little bit. For various reasons. I mean, you could probably guess what the reasons were, but yeah. So yeah. So these two. You want to get into it? Do you have anything else to talk about? Okay.
Let's hit it.
Now, do you know anything about either of these two ladies?
I know about the one that was throwing them babies in the Thames. Remember that one?
Yeah, that's Amelia Dyer.
The other one, no, I didn't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's.
You mentioned something about it. It didn't sound familiar.
It's weird because a long time ago, like, I kind of put these two together. I think these two get linked sometimes just because they were two of the women, because I don't know if, like, anybody that kind of follows stuff about Jack the Ripper and stuff. And there's a theory, I don't buy it, but there's a theory called Jill the Ripper where, you know, people think that maybe Jack the Ripper was a woman. You know, mostly because it seems like, oh, well, only a midwife could have, like, walked around in the streets, like, covered in blood and nobody would have said boo to her. But it's like, I don't know. It's maybe there's other things. But that's going back, like, almost to when the Jack the Ripper murders happened. Like, there were people thinking that it was a woman and stuff. But like I said, I don't buy it. It seems like a very male kind of crime. But it's not impossible. But so both of these women have kind of been bandied about as possible suspects for Jill the Ripper, as they call it. Now, Amelia Dyer, I doubt it, because her MO was completely different. And it seems like her motive was largely, it seemed like, at least at first, was, and I know this is a terrible thing to say, but practical. I mean, she was trying to make money. I think she did start to enjoy it as time went on. But I don't think that was the impetus for her getting into it. I think it was just kind of like monetary concerns to start with. Mary Pearcey, the murders she committed were very brutal, that's for sure. But I don't know necessarily if they were premeditated or if it was just kind of like a crime of passion kind of thing. You know what I mean? So it's like I don't really know if the motive is the same as Jack the Ripper. So I don't really think that either of these two are good candidates. There is another like weird thing that some people point out about the Mary Pearcey case. But I don't know. It's weird, but I think it's a reach. So we'll get into that in a little bit too. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. But I think that's why these two get lumped together a lot.
Yeah, all that worried about who Jack the Ripper was, they came up with some crazy ass ideas. There was definitely a dude.
Yeah, that's a very dudely crime.
Yeah, and he was just had a way to get around and not being noticed. You know, which is that's not that hard to do. To go around and not.
Well, especially back then.
Yeah, you just blend in. He was just wearing something that blood didn't show up on it. Might have been a rain jacket or something. Could have been, or something that was the right color. If it got blood on it, you didn't see it. Some kind of overcoat. Maybe it was a reversible. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe he had it all fucking worked out.
Oh, man. I'm sure. Oh, yeah, I'm sure it was a plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was like any other typical serial killer that never got caught. You know, a Zodiac type dude. It was like that.
Yeah, they planned the shit. I'm not saying, I mean, some of the shit that he did was dumb and everything like that, but it's like, it wasn't that dumb because he never got caught.
Never got caught. He was a thrill killer, I think. He liked the fact that he could get caught but was getting away with it.
Yeah. Camp Guy said people seem to be very desperate just for food and shelter back then, back in the Victorian era. Don't know if they were more or less so than we are now. I would imagine there's more oversight now. Yeah, and matter of fact, and actually the Amelia Dyer case, I kind of feel like her case in particular was, and I'm not saying she wasn't like an evil motherfucker, because she was, but circumstances in society at that time probably contributed to the framework in which she operated, which we'll get into in a little bit. And actually her case and like other cases like hers, 'cause she was a baby farmer, which we'll get into what that is later, but there were a lot of them, and like some of them were legit, but a lot of them weren't, because there wasn't, like you said, any oversight. So her case and some other ones actually led to like laws being changed, like not too long after.
In this era, I don't think they gave a shit about little kids and babies.
No, they really didn't seem to. It's like, especially if the babies were illegitimate or working class, like from a working class family or something like that. They didn't give a shit about poor people. I mean, obviously. And some of the laws they passed back then, like, I was listening to a documentary and they were talking about some of the laws, like I said, that sort of directly or indirectly like contributed to the circumstances in which Amelia Dyer was able to make a lot of money doing what she was doing. But I guess, like, from a Victorian mindset, I get, like, where the impetus for some of these laws came from, but wow, did they really not have the intended consequence that they thought was gonna... It was a case of them being, like, thinking we're passing a law that's gonna, like, encourage family values, and it just kind of, like, horribly blew up in their faces. You know what I mean?
That's the history of civilization right there. Even the Romans said, 2,000 years ago, was it Suetonius or who was it? I don't know. He says you can't legislate morality. Every time you start legislating morality, it backfires. So they were never successfully. You just don't steal, don't kill, don't rape. That's probably don't cheat at business. If you build something you're responsible for, almost back to like Code of Hammurabi, that might work. But real advanced stuff, man, they'll subvert it. Any law you pass, you can subvert it.
Well, like I said, we'll get into that, because that I found that really interesting, like the context in which some of this shit was going on. Not so much Mary Pearcey's thing, because hers just seemed like I said, more like a personal, like a crime of passion. But Amelia Dyer for sure. And Amelia Dyer, it's crazy because I feel like maybe a lot of people aren't that familiar with her, even though they're not entirely sure how many babies she killed, but they're thinking by conservative estimate 400, maybe more.
Yeah.
She really only got, because she did it for a really long time.
It's not unreasonable.
And according to witnesses that were saying how many like babies were coming in and out of her care and shit like that, they extrapolated that over this period of time, that's like 400 or 500 babies. Which is not crazy.
This is happening at a time when abortion was illegal and dangerous. Even if it was legal, it would have been dangerous back then. All medical procedures were.
Yeah, because nobody washed their damn hands.
So really, it was filthy. So really what she was doing is she was kind of providing very late term abortions.
I mean, kind of.
And giving the mother, kind of like some good vibes about it. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, you're gonna find her a better home, that type of shit. No, you're gonna kill that baby.
Yeah.
But there was no place to unload these babies. They were in demand for them. There's plenty of them. Plenty of homeless kids running around.
Well, that's what I'm saying. During this era, it's just like it's really interesting to think that it's like that baby farmers made so much money because there were so many illegitimate children and like orphans and mothers that couldn't care for them because they were poor and shit like that. I mean, they never ran out of babies.
And whatever happened, and even if those kids ended up in orphanages, it was bad. Those were like worse than prisons. All right.
Well, here was another thing that I didn't
sexual abuse and shit
that I didn't realize. But if a baby was illegitimate, they weren't allowed in an orphanage.
Yeah,
so there was another. You were just kind of fucked.
Like a dog, like a stray dog.
Yeah, you were fucked.
And they probably didn't survive too many winters.
No.
And it sounds awful rough, but shit like this is kind of happening now. In certain, there's big homeless encampments all around L.A. and other parts and fucking up north, and going out of control. It was like that, Just that England was a much smaller place. Imagine a lot of that happening in one small area, which is part of their culture, and they just didn't have the technology or the wealth, and society wasn't well developed. It was getting better, but it took a while, you know.
Well, like I said, there was still very much a stigma about poor people.
Well,
too. It's like no one really gave a shit. If you had money, nobody gave a shit about them. You could starve in the street. Nobody cared.
They were real realistic when it came to human life. They didn't really kind of fucking give it any kind of unrealistic value. They were just like, nah, we got lots of y'all. Fucking y'all ain't worth shit. That was just really the... And I don't think a little kid was worth anything until they were maybe, I don't know, 12, 13.
Old enough to work in a coal mine.
Old enough to work in a coal mine, yeah.
So 5.
Yeah. There wasn't... They had lots of those. They're just running around. And who knows what kind of horrible shit happened to those kids?
I'm sure.
Because there were sexual predators of all different kinds, and I imagine some of them came to fucking miserable ends, and we'd never know. You know?
Yeah, I mean the history of all these people is just completely lost.
It's completely lost because that was a time when some perv could just walk out and offer some kid a meal and take it back to the house, and the kid never seen again. And maybe they were kept for a long time and then done away with in fucking gruesome ways. There were guys like that, like, you know, Albert Fish type dudes.
Yeah.
This is Albert Fish wasn't too far away, and H.H. Holmes, I think, was around a little bit after this time. But you know, people were always bad just because they were Victorians and they had a kind of a fucking look to them. They were wearing suits and dresses. That didn't mean those people were any good. They were
way worse than they were terrible.
Yeah. Now they had upper class people,
not everybody, obviously.
Middle class people, more like middle class people, kind of probably had some of the best morals. But rich people did whatever the fuck they wanted, and poor people did whatever the fuck they wanted. Right? They were both kind of like criminals, above and below, you know. So there's no telling what happened to those little kids.
And it was
they
like
probably ended up like becoming like Panzerman.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of them.
Yeah, that's what I mean, because even if they did, you know, grow to adulthood, which I'm sure many of them did not, how are they going to be a normal person like after being treated like that for their entire lives? You know what I mean? It's just life was cheap back then.
Yeah, it was pretty short. You know what I mean? I don't think they made it to 30. A lot of them.
Probably not, because
it caused a lot of trouble on their way out.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about it too, like I said, the living conditions were horrible.
Yeah.
Winters. You know, the winters were horrible. They were all drunks. They were all like on laudanum.
Terrible diets.
That too.
Terrible fucking nutrition. So they were small, weak. If you were poor, you were small and weak. You just too low protein unless you were eating damn cockroaches. Which I don't even know they had cockroaches in England in this era. Probably.
I don't know. I feel like it's too cold for cockroaches.
Might be too cold. I don't know.
I think
I think cockroaches only live in New York because there's a subway
because it's warm.
And there's warm pipes and tunnels and shit.
Yeah, if they didn't have all that,
they probably wouldn't be able to live up there.
Yeah, because they're very tropical.
Yeah.
It has to be hot. But yeah, so they do that. Yeah. Zach says, I need to stop looking at that pic of Mary. It's giving me the creeps. She looks like one of those wax faces of World War I injuries.
Yeah.
I want to get into this, though, because this is crazy. This is going to blow your mind. It blew my mind a little bit, like I said. Because if that picture is indeed of her, and I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be. So let's talk about Mary Pearcey first, because that's kind of the less complicated story. So this woman was born Mary Eleanor Wheeler. She was born in 1866. Now, they don't know a shit ton about her childhood, but now one thing that they do that I've seen like a lot of other things that are about her like report this from her childhood, and this is apparently not the case.
Try your little Harry Potter glasses on.
Well, can I?
Yeah. I was just trying to see that.
Why do you keep distracting me? I'm trying to like get the fucking show done.
That looks better. I think that looks better. Okay. Okay. She's like, oh man,
I lost my place. Well, you keep like I keep trying to talk and you keep like interrupting.
I'm sorry.
Like with bullshit. You know what I mean? I don't know why you do that.
I thought you were right there.
What?
Okay, never mind.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Watching you go down the notes.
But yeah, okay. So one thing that gets reported about her a lot from her childhood that is evidently not true is that a lot of different things will report that her dad, Thomas Wheeler, murdered a guy named Edward Anstey and got hanged for it, like when she was younger. Like, I think she was like a kid or a teenager or something like that. Now, this is apparently not true. There was a guy named Thomas Wheeler, and he was indeed hanged for murdering a guy named Edward Anstey, but it was apparently not her dad. It was like another guy that had the same name. So if you see that reported, that is evidently not true. Like, her dad wasn't hanged or anything like that. Not like it makes a huge amount of difference, but that is something that I saw reported a lot about her childhood, and that is evidently not the case. So here's the crazy thing. So you see that picture there on the left of Mary Pearcey. Now, she was described, I guess she was quite young when she got arrested, like after the murder she did. She was only 24 years old. And she was actually described, they said that she had beautiful hair, beautiful blue eyes, and stuff like that. Nobody said that she was a butterface, even though she is. But the crazy thing about it is that this chick, despite looking like that picture, apparently had all kinds of male admirers. And most of them were like middle class or like shading toward wealthy, because she never had to work a day in her life. Like, she always had like a bunch of dudes going, like sugar daddies, who would like pay her rent and like do all this other kind of stuff. And she just she had all kind of like male admirers. She didn't
look like that at that time.
Maybe not. Like, I don't really know what happened.
She was probably this is before she got out of prison.
And I said
before she went to prison, or when she got out.
She didn't get out of prison.
Oh, okay, she went in at 24.
Yeah, she went in at 24 and she got hanged.
And she got hanged. Okay.
Amelia Dyer was the one that was in and out, because she was like much older.
Okay.
But Mary Pearcey was only 24.
She was a teenager.
I guess, but that's the thing. It's like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think that she was maybe an alcoholic.
Yeah.
So maybe like by the time, you know, she had got to that age, like.
And photography of that era, fucking, it was kind of like, you kind of look like a corpse anyway. Wasn't a very prismatic photo, you know.
Yeah, some of the people back then looked like terrifying. Well, because they didn't have like they don't have like they didn't have quick flash. Well, that too, but they didn't have like quick flash cameras. Like, you had to stand there like really still for like a really long time. So like you couldn't smile or anything like that.
Yeah, and the image just didn't look right. What was those little damn glass plates? They used to have a photograph on it.
Yeah, the
what do they call lithograph or no?
Daguerreotype.
Daguerreotype, that's what it was called. Yeah, you look like a corpse on those things.
Yeah, not really. I have seen some like pictures of people from the Victorian era that were good looking, but this woman was not one of them.
It doesn't look lifelike.
No, like I said, they all kind of look like
statues,
waxy corpses or something. But yeah, so yeah, she apparently was quite the popular young lady. So like one guy, she had this boyfriend named Charles Creighton, and he actually like rented some like rooms for her. I don't know if it was like he didn't buy her house or anything like that, but she apparently had kind of a nice place in North London. And so he would pay, and he would come and see her every week. And she, like I said, she had 2 or 3 going at one time. And then she also had a boyfriend named James Pearcey, and that's where she took the last name from. He didn't marry her or anything like that, but she took his name for whatever reason and just kept it like the rest of her life, which wasn't very long, spoiler alert. But even after like he didn't see her anymore after they broke up or whatever. So she also had this other boyfriend. Like, she was still seeing Mr. Creighton, who was coming by once a week or whatever. But then she met this dude named Mr. Frank Hogg. Now, he was apparently, like, he wasn't wealthy or anything, but he was pretty solidly middle class. He was a furniture remover. She was impressed because, this is hilarious, she was impressed because he had, like, a printed business card, which
big deal.
I guess was something that a lot of people back then didn't have. And it's because they were, like, super expensive or something. She was like, ooh, look at the Rockefeller over here. Yeah. But yeah, so they started going out. And so they started fucking, and she would, like, he had a key to her house, and she would, like, put a little light in the window, like, whenever she was available, like, whenever one of her other gentleman callers wasn't over, I guess, and so that he could just come over and, like, open the door with his key. Problem was, like, the two of them had seen each other for a while, but then it turned out that Frank Hogg was also knocking down this other woman named Phoebe Styles. And Phoebe
Sounds
Styles.
like a hooker's name.
Well, yeah.
That's a damn porn star name, man. Phoebe Styles. Yeah.
Phoebe Styles.
Yeah.
And he knocked Phoebe up. So at this point, he decides, I guess she's like 3 months pregnant, and he decides he's going to do the right thing and marry her. Because, like I said, this is Victorian England. Unwed mothers were really not looked kindly upon, and you really didn't have any options. You were kind of hosed. You either kind of went into prostitution or left the baby out and like went to the workhouse or whatever. That was really the only two options. Yeah.
A lot of them. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So Frank is gonna marry Phoebe because she's gonna have his baby. Now, so when the baby's born, well, the crazy thing about this is that Mary was so into Frank Hogg. They still have letters that she wrote to him because it was all introduced at the trial and stuff. But she was basically so into him that she was like, well, okay, well, if you have to marry Phoebe, then okay, and I'll even be friends with her, but you still have to, like, come and have sex with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they have to, like, share the dude.
Right.
So, so she was willing to do that. So the baby is born. The baby is also named Phoebe, which is very confusing, but they actually called the baby, like, a nickname, which was Tiggy. Now, what ended up happening? So this is about 1890, like early 1890. Her and Frank had gotten Phoebe. Now, her and Frank had gotten married in November of 1888, rather. Now, what happened on this point? I guess at some point, Mary and Phoebe were actually friends. I don't know if Mary was actually just pretending to be her friend or was actually her friend and like some shit went horribly wrong or what. I don't really know what, nobody knows what the fuck she was thinking. But apparently they did were friends and like hung out or whatever, like the two of them. I don't know also if Phoebe knew that Mary and Frank were still banging because they were. I don't know if she knew that. So 1890, October 24th, 1890. Mary writes a little note, like a little invitation, to send to Phoebe's house and says, hey, why don't you come to my house today for tea at 4 p.m., or at 3:30 p.m., or whatever it was. So I guess Phoebe and the baby go over to Mary's house for tea, because of the invitation. Around 4 o'clock on that afternoon, a neighbor of Mary's heard glass breaking and screaming sounds coming from Mary's house. So she went over there to see what was going on, but she knocked at the door, but nobody answered. 3 hours later, at 7 p.m., a woman's body was found lying on the sidewalk in a road called Crossfield Road. So the guy that found it, he called the cops, obviously. The woman's laying there, and he's at first, he thought she was just drunk, but he couldn't see her face because it was covered with a sweater or a piece of cloth or something. So he calls the cops come, and they peel away the sweater, and the woman's face is just all bloody, and her throat is slit so deep that her head was almost cut off. So they didn't know who this was at first. So they took her to the police station and then the morgue. And then they found out that not only did she have was she almost beheaded, but she also had a fractured skull. It looked like somebody had beaten the shit out of her head also. And she was also, her hands and arms and stuff like that were all bruised, as though she'd been in a confrontation, or she tried to defend herself or whatever. They also determined that she had probably not been killed where she was found, because there was a little bit of blood there, but not enough, because of the injuries. So they're well, she must have been killed elsewhere and then dumped there. So as I said, the police didn't know who this was. But later on, not too far away from where the body was found, they actually found a pram, or a baby carriage in U.S. terms, with some blood on it. And that was about a mile down the road. So they thought that was a little weird. So they took that back to the police station as well. And then the next morning, they found another body, a baby. And this baby had died from suffocation, was otherwise unharmed. Well, unharmed. She was dead, but you know what I mean? She had been suffocated, but no other violence.
Cause of death was such suffocation.
No other violence had been done to the body. What they thought later, after they found out who this was that the baby had either just been smothered, like, you know, after the mom was killed, but they're like, also what could have happened was that Mary put the baby in the baby carriage and then put her mom's body on top of it so she could like carry it and dump it somewhere, and then like the baby suffocated then. They're not really sure how that happened.
I doubt that.
Well, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So, okay, so like I said, they didn't know who this was at first. They didn't know this was Phoebe. So Frank, the husband, he's like kind of wigging out because Phoebe was supposed to go and have tea with Mary and then like never came back with the baby, and he just thought that was unusual. So then they saw the paper, and it said, hey, we found this woman's body and this baby's body, and we don't know who they are. And so he's like freaking out. So him and his sister, Clara, they go to report Phoebe missing. Now, Clara goes to Mary's house and said, hey, do you know where Phoebe is? And Mary's like, nope, absolutely not. I do not know where that woman is. No siree. So then her and Clara go to the morgue together to see if the body that they found is Phoebe. And one of the things that made the police suspect Mary initially was they were like, when she came into the morgue, like with her sister-in-law, well, it wasn't her sister-in-law, but it was Frank's sister. They said she was acting real weird. Like she was acting like real hysterical, and she was fine until they like showed them the injuries that Phoebe had sustained, and then she started like freaking out, and then she started to insist that the body was not Phoebe, even though Clara said, yeah, that absolutely is who that is. But Mary was just acting so weird that they like took notice of it. You know what I mean? Like she was acting super hysterical. So they also, while they were there, the cops also said, hey, look at this pram. And is this like, do you recognize this or whatever? And Clara said, yeah, that was Phoebe's, you know, baby carriage. Now, interestingly, when the police were kind of like investigating this whole thing, it came to light that one of Mary's neighbors had seen Mary pushing that baby carriage with something big hanging out of it. Like, and like at night, or I don't know if it was at night, but they was like, they saw it from kind of like far away, but it's like, yeah, they couldn't tell what it was, but it was just like a big thing like hanging out of the baby carriage. And they thought that was a little bit weird, like just walking down the street like that. Now, once they determined that this body was Phoebe, the husband, Frank, was actually considered like the first suspect, because that's usually, I mean, then and now, that's usually the first person that they suspect. Now, they searched his house, and they found this key that didn't fit any of the locks in the house. And they're like, well, what the fuck is this key? And then he confessed, oh, well, that's a key to Mary's house. Me and her have been fucking. So yeah, so he had to like confess to the affair, but he's like, well, yeah, but I didn't kill my wife though. So the police thought that, like I said, Mary's behavior at the morgue was very strange. So they're like, maybe we should interview this crazy bitch, because something's going on there. We're not really entirely sure what it is. So they go to her house and search her house. Now, Mary, let's just put it this way, is not a criminal mastermind, okay? Because they go and search her house. They find blood stains and just like blood spatter all over the kitchen. They find a carving knife with blood on it. And they find blood on the fireplace poker. There were also 2 broken windows in the kitchen, which, you know, the neighbor, that corroborated like the neighbor's story, because she said she heard glass breaking like at around that time. There was also a rug that had blood on it that looked like Mary had at least tried to clean that, even though she didn't look like she tried to clean anything else. So why the rug? Who knows? But yeah. And then while the police were searching her house, they're like, Mary was acting super weird. They're like, the whole time that they were looking around the house being like, hey, blood here, blood there, blood everywhere, she was like sitting at the piano, like playing the piano and like singing really loud. like just the whole time, and they're just like, what the fuck is up with this crazy twat? And so they asked her, they're like, well, you know, what is all this blood doing in your house, ma'am? And she said that she'd been killing mice, but she chanted it over and over, killing mice, and they're just like, great.
Well, she's losing her mind.
Yeah.
She knows she's caught.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. So at this point, wisely, the detective's like, I think we need to arrest this lady. I mean, clearly there's something the matter with her. So they arrested her and charged her with 2 murders. And then when they searched her bodily, they also found blood on her clothes, and they found like her hands were all scratched up as though she'd been in a struggle. And most damningly, on one of her fingers, they found 2 wedding rings, one of which belonged to Phoebe.
What was she thinking?
So,
She
yeah,
was
like I said,
criminalized
not a
mastermind.
criminal mastermind,
Yeah.
as I said. Not the sharpest tool in the shed, is what we're saying. So, yeah. So they put her in custody, and they're going to commit her for trial, right? Now, apparently, while she was in custody, there was like a woman there like that was guarding her, like looking after her or whatever. And apparently, Mary told this woman, yeah, you know, Phoebe did come to tea that day, and like she said something that offended me, and we got into an argument. And at which point she kind of decided, it's like, oh, maybe I should shut up because that's like not really making me look good.
Yeah.
So she didn't say anymore. You know
That's
what
how
I mean?
I figured it happened.
Yeah.
They started fighting over him.
Well, yeah, I don't know what he looked like, but I'm sure he wasn't really fucking.
Right.
So they put her on trial. Now she enters a plea of not guilty, which
How?
good luck.
Yeah. Well, she didn't have anything to lose.
Yeah.
Fighting the death penalty.
Right, yeah,
She said
because
guilty,
they
she
absolutely did not fuck around back then.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, you did shit like that, they're like, yep, hang him.
Yeah.
And they didn't even wait that long.
Uh-huh.
And until 1907, I think, they didn't even have an appeals process. Like, if you got a death penalty, they're like, tough shit,
Yeah.
pretty much. Unless, like, afterward, I think there was kind of a stipulation that if afterward you come up with some reason that, like, you shouldn't kill them, like, oh, they're pregnant or whatever.
Right.
But there wasn't any appeal process. You got a death penalty, you were gonna hang.
Yeah,
So-
it was more humane to get it over with.
Yeah, they didn't really leave him hanging out very long. Because
Yeah.
I think she ended up getting hanged like 3 weeks after or something like that.
Yeah. Nowadays, they let you sit in there for fucking 10, 15 years, think about it, then they kill you. 20 years.
But
If
yeah,
you were fighting it, it might take 30 years here in the U.S. It's fucking ridiculous.
yeah. Okay. So one of the things that and I think I brought this up earlier, but one of the things that they talked about that the prosecution like had against her, they're like, well, look, we have all these letters that Mary wrote to Phoebe, or Mary wrote to Frank rather, saying like how much she loved him and like she never wanted him to leave, and it's like, I'll even be friends with your wife if I have to, and blah de blah. So they were trying to establish that obviously they were both fighting over this dude, and for whatever reason, like things came to a head that day. Now, they're not entirely sure, and they still aren't, whether the crime was premeditated, like I said, or whether it was a crime of passion. Now, on the side of premeditation, they pointed out that they're like, well, Mary did send an invitation to Phoebe to come to tea that day at her house. I don't know if she was planning on killing her, but they did say that when they searched the house, that there was blinds or like dark fabric had been put over the windows that weren't, it wasn't there before. So it's like, so that seems to suggest that she was planning on doing some shit that she didn't want some people to see.
Well, she didn't play as cool as a cucumber afterwards. Which leads me to believe that I think it was fucking just spur of the moment.
Yeah, it does seem like that.
It's like she wasn't mentally prepared for it.
It does seem weird that that the dark fabric was over the windows,
Might have been
but
something else.
that might have been something else.
Right.
But it's like, I don't know. Well, that's the thing. They're like, well, she sent an invitation to her, like, to come to her house that day. But it's like, I don't know how often that was. It's like, I heard that they said that they were friends. So maybe it wasn't that unusual for her to invite her over. But, I mean, if that was the only time that she did that, then yeah, that would be super sus.
Yeah, but you also wouldn't think that, well, I'll invite her over and I'll kill her. Nobody will think it was me. No.
Maybe she did think that. Maybe she was that delusional.
Yeah.
Maybe she's that
But
delusional.
then she wasn't playing it off afterwards. See? There was no plan
Yeah,
there.
like I said, well,
I think
and
that they got into an argument over the dude. She felt insulted and hit her with that damn poker. And then she came
throat,
to.
yeah.
She came to, but they were fighting, and then she slashed her throat. And then she smothered the baby, threw the baby in the carriage, threw her in the carriage, and tried to wheel it all out.
Yeah, just dumped it like a mile or
dumped her
two
off.
down the road.
She's probably going to dump her further away, but she fell out and couldn't get her back in. So then,
And then she was like, fuck it.
And then just kept going with the damn buggy.
Yeah, she went another mile, I think.
Went another mile to get away from it because it fell out.
Right. Yeah, just la la la. Yeah, just I don't know, wouldn't look suspicious at all.
She had that baby in there. So shit, I gotta get rid of this baby. Then she got rid of all that shit and then walked back home.
It's crazy to me that she didn't try to clean up the house though, because there was still blood just everywhere.
Yeah, she might have not been very cleanly to begin with.
Maybe.
And didn't have a concept of that. Didn't have any idea what forensics were.
It's like she tried to clean the rug. It seemed like, but the rest of the shit, not so much.
She was probably pinched for time because it wasn't planned. So she had to get rid of that body first, and she wasn't strong enough really to do it. And by the time she got back, she was bushed and fucking thought she got away with it, was scared, you know. Cleaned up a little bit, but then didn't think about all the blood that she slung around after fucking hitting her with a damn stick, the poker. Because it was probably, you know, blood splatter from swinging.
Yeah, because man, that gets items around everywhere.
She didn't realize it was up on the ceiling and the walls and stuff. She probably just looked on the floor thinking that blood just falls. Doesn't realize that she's fucking flinging it on the walls and the ceiling and shit.
I mean, that was kind of the whole that was Dexter's job on the show.
And it may have been
he was a blood spatter.
The house may have been pretty dirty by today's standards, so it's all just kind of blended in.
I feel like the Victorian era as a whole was dirty by today's standards. Yeah. Everything was covered with shit and
stank
and like fucking intestines and
there was horse shit everywhere in downtown. I think only real rich neighborhoods they picked up horse shit. The rest of the time they just let it pile up.
Yeah, and then it's England, so it rains all the time, so it was nice and slushy.
Yeah.
So probably like the bottom of all your clothes like probably had poop on them all the time.
People throwing chamber pots out the window.
Yeah. Just disgusting.
Nasty fuckers.
That's what I mean. It's like, can you imagine how that smelled? Jesus, I would never want to go back to that time. But yeah.
There wasn't any kind of planning. Fucking urban planning. They just started building houses up next to each other.
Yeah. That didn't come until later. They didn't come until later. Everyone just kind of piled everything on top of it. Just like, well, there's space over here. Just put that over there.
Yeah, put it over there. It'll be all right.
It'll be all right. They weren't really thinking ahead. They weren't really thinking ahead.
No, they weren't putting water pipes or anything.
No. Like I said, I know I've recommended this book before, but there's one called The Ghost Map that's really, really good. That's kind of about London. It's about that cholera epidemic and how they figured out that like drinking poop water like actually gives you diseases.
Who would have thought?
Right?
It's just shit. It came out of you. It's natural. As God intended.
I'm sure probably some people did think like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of makes sense if you say it that way, even though it's revolting.
Yeah, there are people today that think that it's unnatural to shower, so they just walk around stinking. Oh, well, you don't have to shower. Yeah, you don't have to shower. You don't have to wipe your ass either. I mean, you're gonna have fucking. You
don't have to, but you're not gonna have.
Animals don't wipe their ass. Yeah, they do. They fucking drag their fucking ass across the fucking grass and shit if they have to, and then or just lick it.
Yeah.
But you know, they got fucking saliva that'll kill anything. You know, fucking humans don't have that.
Yeah. That's why they don't have toilet paper. Yeah. They don't need it.
Yeah, they passed that test. They have a fucking natural selection. Any cat or dog that didn't have fucking caustic saliva died from dirty ass. Ass to mouth disease.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
So yeah. So like I said, they're not really sure if it was just like you said. I kind of feel like I'm leaning more toward it being. She just came over, like she wasn't intending to kill her, but it just things went drastically sideways. Like they started having an argument about it. But
like she insulted her
because apparently they had hung out before, at least as far as I could determine, and like she hadn't killed her then, obviously. But it
was an honor killing kind of deal.
I guess.
I think she got insulted. They were fighting over the same man. She probably insulted her. Well, you're not really good enough to keep him. That type of deal. I got him. That kind of shit.
Yeah, she might have like said
some shit like that.
Not blaming the victim. I'm just saying.
And then she went, "You bitch, something. You!" And fucking. And when she turned her back, she fucking grabbed that poker. Pow! And then she went, "Oh shit! Now I gotta kill her."
Yeah. Whoops.
Yeah. It's like that. Probably.
Yeah.
I don't think she's smart. I don't think she was smart enough to plan anything out anyway. I think it was just spur of the moment shit.
Yeah, and like I said, how weird she acted after. Although the weird thing about it was that after she
was in trouble.
Yeah, but after she got the sentence, they said she was like the fucking calmest person ever. But it's so I don't really know.
Well, she got resigned. She knew she was gonna hang. Then she goes into shock.
So, I mean, basically the only defense that they could come up with was that, well, they didn't think that a woman of her size, because she wasn't a big lady. I think she was a little bit above average for a woman at that time. I think she was about 5'6", but she wasn't real hefty or anything. She was just like regular size. And they're thinking that because of the brutality of the crime and the physicality of it, they were trying to argue that she wouldn't have been able to do it. But I don't think anybody bought that because the jury only took 52 minutes. 52 minutes.
Oh, well,
and it was only a 3-day trial, too, like, to give all the evidence. And then, like, on the third day, they're like, yep, she did it.
too much physical evidence linking her.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was just, like I said, she didn't clean up anything. There was just blood all over her house. And, like, the weapons were still there.
Yeah, open and shut case.
And everything. And she had motive and all that. Now, she did say that she was innocent. That was because they always ask you, like, you know, do you have anything to say about that? And she said she was innocent, but the judge was like, nope.
Yeah.
And he's basically like, yeah, we're going to hang her.
We're going to hang her.
So, as I mentioned, it was actually 1907 before they passed that whole appeal thing, so there were no appeals. Her solicitor did actually make some attempts on her behalf to say that, well, she wasn't really responsible for the crime because she suffered from, like, epileptic fits. And so maybe she had a fit and, like, didn't know what she was doing or something like that. Like, they tried to come at it from that angle.
That was a terrible way.
But again, well, like I said, what choice did they have? They didn't really have a lot of options open to them.
Yeah, probably it had to be something medical. Be the only way.
Yeah.
So that was the argument that he used.
Yeah.
He couldn't say, well, they got to an argument. She lost cool reasoning and calm reflection. She was aggravated into it, you know. That nowadays you could use that as a defense and come up with manslaughter. You know, wasn't a murder, it wasn't planned. She was fucking with her, and she lashed out in the heat of the moment, but she couldn't take it back.
Yeah.
Then she killed the baby. See, so then it's real hard to get a fucking manslaughter conviction because there's 2 homicides. So they're gonna say no.
Yeah, because
the second one was fucking.
Well, yeah, and I think that's kind of why
premeditated on the baby.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been something else if, like, maybe she'd have got away with, like, manslaughter if
she let the baby go.
If she hadn't killed the baby.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bryce. Very interesting subject this episode. Mary Pearcey looks almost like a robot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what her fucking problem was.
Yeah, I don't know what her thinking was. She should have just left the baby alive.
Yeah.
And that way, if she did get caught,
then she'd at least have a little bit of a leg to stand on. She might have still hung. I'm not saying that, but
she could have said it was an accident. They got into a fight. She tried to kill me, and I was defending myself. That's why I didn't kill the baby. It's a different way. You know, it doesn't have to be the truth. You just need a defense in court.
And as far as I know, she didn't even really try to argue that it was self-defense. Like, she came at me and, like,
right. She wasn't thinking she's dumb.
Yeah, she didn't seem like super.
And who knows? Probably in England at that time, you couldn't have. There was probably no concept of self-defense anyway.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'm just saying that it's just kind of like, I don't know. It does seem like a lot of the defense they tried to use were just like, oh, she went temporarily crazy, or she had epilepsy, or something like that. Which I never heard of anybody like having an epileptic fit that made him kill somebody. But
usually, despotic tyrannies fucking don't have self-defense. Somebody comes in your house. Fucking, if you kill him, then it's murder. Because they can say, well, he was just there to rob you. You don't know that. You know what I mean? Fucking, you didn't have to kill him. But despotic tyrannies hate all the population. So they're just happy that he's dead, and then they're happy they're going to kill you in their prison. So that's why they do that.
But yeah, so even though, the solicitor tried to argue, like I said, it was a last-ditch effort to just get her out of the death penalty. But the judge wasn't having it. So basically, yeah, we're going to hang her. Now, they said, despite her bizarre-ass behavior, like after the murder, that once she was in custody and once she had got the death sentence, she was pretty fucking cool as a cucumber. Actually, I think the hangman said she was like the calmest person I ever hanged or whatever. She was just like totally chill, which they thought was like really, really weird. The only time that she got upset, that she showed any emotion whatsoever, was that she asked Frank to come visit her, like, before she got executed, like, at Newgate Prison, and he didn't show up. And they were like, and she was just, like, inconsolable after that. They said she just stayed up all night crying that he didn't show up to come see her before she died. But they said that was the only time that she showed any emotion whatsoever. Like, the rest of the time, she was just totally, totally calm, which they thought was very weird. Like I said, especially considering how crazy she had acted after the fucking whatever. Now, here's...
That's because she knew she was a goner.
Yeah.
That's why she was acting crazy. She knew there was no way out of it, and they were going to figure it out.
Yeah, so she was just probably like, why bother making an
she,
effort?
She was losing her mind. She knew she was going to hang.
Yeah. And like I said, you have to think she was pretty young, too. She was only 24, I think, when she got arrested.
Yeah. Uneducated and dumb and young. But she knew she was going to get caught.
Yeah.
That's why she was acting that way. She knew she was going to get caught as soon as she hit that girl in the head with a fucking poker.
Yeah, because it's almost like I said, it's like she didn't even bother to, like, try to cover it up, really. I mean, other than saying, no shit, I didn't do that, but she didn't, like, try to hide anything.
Dumbass killed that baby, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. She had a fight with the mom. There was no reason to kill the baby. Although she was maybe she was just trying to kill them both so she could get the man.
Yeah, I kind of thought that it's like she was taking out his other family.
So she'd have a chance of marrying
so that... Yeah.
But that may be reading too much into it. That might have been something on a subconscious level. I don't think she...
I mean, that's what I thought.
You would think that, but like I said, that's probably a subconscious level.
Yeah,
because if she was really wanting that, she'd have planned it a lot better.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing that's kind of making me lean more toward this being just, like, not premeditated.
Yeah, no.
Was that had it been premeditated, she would have, like you said, maybe played it a lot better. Like, she didn't even clean the shit up. It was just, there was still blood everywhere, and she just left the murder weapons laying there and shit like that. Left the body, like, not that far from the house, just dumped it on the road.
Why would you want the crime scene to be your house? That's a fucking dead giveaway. Dead giveaway.
Yeah, somebody murdered in your house.
Yeah.
Like, that's a little suspicious.
Why didn't you invite her over and let's go for a walk, and then you go for a walk and you kill her, and then you call the police and a man robbed us. That would be more likely.
Yeah.
I ran, I don't know what happened.
Right.
Type of shit.
See, yeah, that would have been like a much better. I'm not like giving people advice like on how to murder people.
Well, that's
I'm just
not
saying
advice. I mean, fucking,
I'm just saying that it's like there are lots of better ways to go about it.
Any idiot could come up with that. They still get caught when they do that.
Yeah, they do.
Man. Oh, I don't know what happened. A man came and carjacked me and killed my children.
Yeah.
Black man carjacked me and killed my children.
We haven't done a show about that.
There was like 2 or 3 of those.
Well, I'm thinking of like the most famous one. What was her name? Susan Smith?
She was the one that drove the damn van into the water.
And
drowned the kids.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we've done a show about her, have we? Shit, maybe we should.
There was also that other one that went fucking crazy and drowned all the kids in the bathtub.
Oh yeah, that's
right. And the oldest one was, no, mama, please don't do that. And then, no, not me. Man, you imagine being the kid old enough to see the babies being drowned, knowing that you're next.
I can't imagine.
Man,
begging
with
horrible.
the mama, no, please, man.
Yeah, that's fucked up. That's fucked up. Yeah. I don't know how anybody could do that. Yeah.
She got off. If I remember correctly, postpartum depression.
Yeah, I might have to look into that case because I don't remember exactly what ended up happening to her. I don't think they just like let her off scot-free.
She went to some mental institution.
Well, yeah, they might have sent her to a mental institution, but that's not really getting off scot-free, is it? Because like,
well, sometimes that's life anyway.
Yeah, that's what I mean. A lot of times sometimes it's like you don't get a sentence; they just put you in there and like they won't let you out.
That's what happened with her.
Yeah, but
a long time. That was back in the 80s, I think.
Yeah. I can't remember. But okay, so the weird thing about this is kind of like one of the enduring mysteries of the Mary Pearcey case, is that the night before she was executed, she calls her solicitor, who's, going through like all her final requests, like who she's leaving her shit to and everything like that. And she very specifically said that she wanted this ad to run in a newspaper, not in England, in Madrid, in Spain. And this ad read something to the effect of, MECP, last wish of MEW, have not betrayed. That's what it said. Now, MEW, I'm assuming, is her birth name, which was Mary Eleanor Wheeler, so she's talking about herself. MECP, nobody knows what that means. Now, some people have speculated, and again, I think this is a little bit of a reach, but some people have speculated that MECP happens to be the first letters of 4 of the canonical Jack the Ripper victims. And so some people have speculated that either Mary Pearcey was Jack the Ripper, or Jill the Ripper, as they call that theory, or knew who Jack the Ripper was, or was like an accomplice of his. I don't really buy that, especially because the way that she committed the crime seemed, like I said, very much like a crime of passion, just committed because of jealousy or because they had an argument or something like that, and not really the same way that Jack the Ripper went about it. But nobody knows like what that message meant, and a lot of people have like speculated, not necessarily that it was something having to do with Jack the Ripper, but everybody's just kind of like wondering what the fuck that even meant and who the fuck she was even talking to, because I don't know if she'd ever even been to Spain.
She was probably fantasizing about some dream man that lived in Spain. She's sending her last fucking love letter to him. So
yeah, it might
be.
She's
getting ready to be She's getting ready to get killed. Her brain ain't working right.
Or maybe she's just like, I'm gonna fuck with people. I'm just gonna put this like crazy ass fucking ad in here that like in like hundreds of years from now people will still be wondering what the fuck this means.
It's fantasy.
It's like so fucking
sounds like some kind
cryptic.
Sounds like some kind of fantasy she had.
Yeah. But so they asked her what that meant, but she like refused to tell anybody. And it's like she absolutely would not confess either. Like she just said she was innocent the whole time, even though she was totally calm about getting hanged. But she did get hanged, you know. Crazy thing about this was that, Madame Tussauds, the wax museum, very famous wax museum in London. I've been there, actually. It's quite cool. They have a chamber of horrors, and they bought the pram from Frank.
Oh, damn.
And they also made a wax statue of Mary Pearcey, like, not long after she was hanged, like, to put in the chamber of horrors. So, quite famous around this time period.
So that's the first case, right?
Yeah.
This one's warming up to the second case.
Yeah, the second one we're going to be talking about. All right,
this might be a good time to ask you guys to go ahead and hit that like button. And if
hit the like
share
button.
And subscribe to the channel. And we should play some commercials, if you ask me.
You think?
Play some commercials, Jan.
All right.
Be back in a second.
All right, I'm going to play some commercials. We'll be right back in just a minute. All right, we're back. Got ice in our drinks. We got everything like that. Thank you very much, Jeffy Art.
Got fucking a little super chat.
Little
Thank you
super
very
chat.
much.
Yeah. So so you want to talk about Amelia Dyer? You know a little bit more about this case than you know about the first one.
You told me about this years back. I think we mentioned her on a show.
Yeah, I think we maybe did. Because the thing about it is that, like I said, they're not really entirely sure how many victims she had. If it's as many as they think it is, then she's easily the most prolific female serial killer. Maybe the most prolific serial killer in England. Yeah, and maybe, I don't know. She'd be up there. That's for sure. Like I said, they can't prove it. They're just extrapolating from, how long she was operating, how many babies people saw coming in and out of her care, like neighbors and things like that, and how many of those babies were not, like, accounted for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they did find a bunch of babies in the Thames also, like, and in various rivers, like, near where she lived. She didn't kill all of them, though, because, like, this is fucked up, but we'll get into why this is. But around this time period, a lot of people were just kind of chucking their babies in the river.
Yeah.
So,
we couldn't do anything with them.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So this is pretty fucking harsh time. And that's what I was saying earlier about how I'm not saying that she was a product of her time because, well, I mean, she was, but I'm just saying that doesn't excuse what she did. But I'm just saying that in the framework of the time, it almost kind of like, it was almost inevitable that somebody like this would come along.
Well, yeah, they had just a huge glut of unwanted children, and there's no means of taking care of them. Couldn't get them into any orphanages or anything. And somebody's going to capitalize on that.
Yep.
And she came in.
Yeah, there was no
way to make money off.
Yeah, it was like there was no regulation of this of the service that she provided.
Yeah,
until later.
Why would they want to regulate it? They didn't give two shits about it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like afterward they did, but not so much before.
They didn't realize. I don't think they realized the magnitude of what was happening.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I don't think they did until they started because, like I said, she wasn't the only one that was doing this. There were some baby farmers that were legit that would actually take in your baby and take care of the baby, but like some of them, there was a lot of exploitation of the system going on.
Yeah.
So she wasn't the only one, and actually there was another woman. I think her name was Margaret Waters. And she got caught doing it too, and she got hanged, I think, a couple of years before Amelia Dyer did. So Amelia Dyer, now they do know actually quite a bit about her childhood. Interestingly, she did not come from poverty. She wasn't wealthy, but she came from a really, really solidly middle class household. Like her dad was a skilled tradesman; he was a shoemaker, and she was the youngest. She had 4 older siblings. But they were actually pretty comfortable. And unlike about 75% of the other kids in this strata, like, she was actually really educated. She went to, like, a church-run school. So she had, like, a fairly privileged upbringing for this time period. You know what I mean? So she it wasn't all just, roses and unicorn farts, though. Because her mom got typhus at some point and began to decline. Like, she started having like horrible hallucinations, and she would just like, she was just getting sicker and sicker, and she was just getting crazier and crazier.
It's another shitty water disease.
Yeah,
Shit
see,
in the water.
that's what I mean.
Typhus.
They didn't know any better. Just pooping in the water and drinking it.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it just never no good ever comes.
I believe that's where that came from. No, it was just sewage mixing in with food. I could give you typhus and water. Yeah.
But yeah. So the mom had that and started having like all these fits and stuff. And because Amelia was the youngest daughter, it usually fell on the youngest daughter to like care for sick family members or elderly family members or something like that. So they speculate that probably she would have been the one taking care of her mother. And like I said, typhus is a pretty shitty way to go. And it took a while. So her mom died in 1848. Now, after that, I guess Amelia went and lived with her aunt. This was in Bristol. And then she started apprenticing at like a corset maker. Now, her dad died in 1859, and then she had a brother named Thomas who was older, and he took over the shoe business. But Amelia, she moved a little bit away, and then she got married. Now, she married this guy named George Thomas. Now, at the time that she married him, she was 24 or 26. He was 59. Now, interestingly, they both lied about their ages on the marriage certificate, so it wouldn't seem quite as weird. She actually added 6 years onto her age, and he subtracted 11 years from his age, so it wouldn't look like the gap was so big. But yeah, so he was, for then, though, he was quite elderly. So, you know, that's kind of interesting. So after she married him, it seemed at first that Amelia was going to have a completely respectable middle-class existence. She actually went into training as a nurse, which in the Victorian era was, I mean, I'm not saying it's not a hard job nowadays, because it is, but back then it was like way, way harder. But yeah, so she went into training for that. And basically what ended up happening, though, was that while she was in her nurse's training, she met this woman named Ellen Dane. And this was a pretty fateful meeting, I think, that maybe kind of sent Amelia down the fucking path that she went down. Not saying she wouldn't have done it anyway, but I'm just saying this was kind of like the catalyst. So Ellen Dane was a midwife. And she was also a baby farmer on the side. Like, she would earn extra money doing that. And she told Amelia all about the baby farming gig. And Amelia was intrigued. Now, interestingly, not too long after Amelia and Ellen met each other, Ellen actually ended up getting in trouble for her baby farmer stuff, and she fucked off. She, like, came to the U.S. She got the fuck out of the country, like, because she was afraid she was going to get arrested. So there was that. But see, here's the thing. The situation of baby farming is essentially, like, unregulated adoption is kind of what it is. Because in the Victorian era, if you were not married, like, unwed mothers were super, super stigmatized. There was basically, like, no recourse for you if you got pregnant out of wedlock. If you had a baby, like, orphanages would not take them. You could not work at a workhouse even, which was kind of like the lowest of the low, because they're like, oh, well, you have a kid and it's just not going to work out. You're not going to be able to work. You know what I mean? So you couldn't really do much of anything. So that's why I heard a statistic, and I don't know if this is true, but they said 1 out of 12 women were prostitutes or had to work as prostitutes, which sounds like a lot, but it's just like, considering the conditions of the time, probably not that inaccurate. I mean, because they didn't really have a lot of options.
Well, someone would have been too old.
Yeah.
Someone would have been married, didn't need to. Someone probably would have been too young or working too hard. Yeah, that's probably about right. Fucking. That's
what I mean.
8%.
Like, when I heard that, I was like, wow, that sounds like a lot. But then, like, when I was thinking about it, I'm like, oh, well, maybe not.
That's actually not that many.
Maybe not.
Yeah, it's not that many, actually.
But
you would think that it would be more than that. You would think it'd be like 1/6.
Yeah.
Under those conditions, but no, it's not.
But yeah, so if you were a woman and you got pregnant out of wedlock, you were pretty much fucked. And you were fucked even harder after 1834. After 1834, they passed this law called the Poor Law Amendment Act. Now, the upshot of this, what the supposed, what this law was supposed to do. It was supposed to, like I said, like, encourage more family values by discouraging people from having children out of wedlock. I'm like, yeah, good luck with that. What it ended up doing, so the Poor Law Amendment Act basically said that if a guy got a woman pregnant, he had no financial obligation toward that child at all. Like, it absolved the man of all responsibility. Right. So which...
trying to keep the women to keep their legs closed.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think that was the intention.
Yeah.
Obviously, that is not how it worked out.
No.
Like I said, it ended up blowing up in their faces, like, severely, because, yeah, it just went. So now women had even less recourse, because it's like, you couldn't even get the dude to marry you or anything like that. You could just knock a woman up and be like, bye, not my problem.
Yeah, probably because there was probably like a lot of situations where women would get pregnant on purpose to try to force a man to marry them. It's probably what was happening. So they said, oh no, you can't do that. You can't have sex with him before you're married and then try to get him to marry you. That's old South American trick right there. So they made that law. Now he doesn't. If he gets you pregnant, you're fucked. He could just walk.
Yeah, like I said, you were fucked before, but now you're like doubly fucked.
You're right. So they're probably trying to stop women from doing that, but then they just made the situation worse.
Yeah, it made it like exponentially worse.
It's probably better to just put it on the guy and go, look, if you get these women pregnant, you're going to pay child support. And then the guys all of a sudden, but want to use birth control. But here's the thing: a lot of times birth control was illegal in these countries. You couldn't have,
Which again, that's
couldn't
fucked
even
up.
fucking use a pig skin because that was like, we can't do that.
Yeah,
and people will just have sex all the time. That was the thinking,
Which is dumb as hell. That is dumb as hell.
It was just the mentality of the time.
Yeah.
And that mentality went on for a long time. It was even here in the United States, all the way up until the fucking 20s, 30s.
I think some people still have that.
Yeah.
That it's like,
some people still think that
if
way.
you tell kids about birth control, they'll just be fucking all day long. I'm just like, that's not really how it works.
Yeah, well, they fucking had childish thinking anyway because we didn't get any training on that. We knew all about that by 9th grade. 8th grade, you knew all about that.
You didn't have sex ed class that told you about birth control and stuff?
If we did, I don't remember it. And we probably laughed at it that, we already knew.
I did. They talked about STDs and everything.
I already knew that shit by the time.
I did too, but I'm just saying that they did have a class in my public school.
I knew about that shit by the time I was in 4th, 5th grade.
Yeah, well, like I said, I did too, but I'm just saying.
Back in the late 70s.
I think it was 9th grade that they had the formal class that like taught you all about that.
Back in the 70s, fucking, we could get our hands on porn. Fucking porn magazines and shit. Magazines back then. We'd have fucking stashes of that shit out in the woods.
Always out in the woods.
Like, because you find it in the garbage. You pick in the garbage. You go, he's throwing them out. Fucking
Yeah, the wife found them.
You can't take them home.
Well, yeah.
Your mom will find them.
Got to stick them somewhere.
So you're like 5th grade, and fucking, we have a whole fucking shack full of that shit.
Yeah, I think a lot of boys did.
Yep.
But that's why you find porn in the woods all the time.
Yeah, that's where it's.
Because that's the only place they could put it. You couldn't put it up in a tree house or nothing like that because your mom might find it.
They find it. Yeah. We had that shit hidden inside an old fucking plastic fucking beanbag.
Yeah.
Because it was waterproof. You could zip it. You put it in there with the fucking little white BBs. It was the white foam.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, remember those?
Yeah, I had one of those. It was yellow.
Yeah.
Tammy said, I watched another YouTube channel called Briefcase. Oh, I know what you're talking about. I've seen some of theirs too. It deals with old crimes, and most of the murders seem to be young women murdered by their baby daddies. Statistically, it is quite likely when a woman gets pregnant that their partner will... I mean, it's not super likely, but if the woman gets murdered when she's pregnant, it's 99.9% of the time it's their baby daddy. Yeah. So, let me see. Okay, so what this law ended up doing... which, duh. But now, like, dudes didn't have any responsibility. Women were already kind of hosed because it's like, well, you couldn't take the kid to the orphanage. You couldn't go to the workhouse and, like, make money, which it wasn't a lot, but it was better than nothing. So it's like, what the fuck are they going to do now? So something came out called baby farming. So what a baby farm was, like I said, it was essentially, like, unregulated adoption, sort of. What people would do was they would advertise in the paper and they'd be like, okay, well, we have a home for, like, they would call it a confinement home, which I think is really funny. So it's like, so if you're a woman that's pregnant and your family doesn't, like, disowns you or you don't want anybody to know you're pregnant, you go and stay at this house and, like, hide until you have the baby, and that for a nominal fee. And then when the baby's born, then either these people will maintain the baby for X amount of dollars or pounds per week, or you give them a flat fee and they'll be like, oh, well, we'll find a home for it, or we'll just adopt it and take care of it. You know what I mean? In theory, that's what was supposed to be going on. And like I said, some of the baby farms were legitimate. Like, they did legitimately find the kids homes.
Those are for the rich
or
girls.
Take care. Right. But like I said, now it was all... They said the interesting thing, obviously, it's mostly going to be like, working class, poor people, stuff like that, because they have the least amount of options. But they said wealthy people would do it too, because, wealthy girls also got knocked up, because everybody likes sex, you know what I mean? So it's just kind of like...
Rich girls were probably doing it more.
Yeah, they probably were. So their families were ashamed of them, obviously, but they had the means to be like, hey, let's pay this baby farmer. We're going to stick you in this confinement home for 9 months or whatever. And then you have the baby and then we're just going to fob it off on somebody else and no one's going to be the wiser. You know what I mean?
And you come back and fucking nobody will know.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So that's what they were doing. And there were a lot of baby farm. I think I was watching a documentary earlier that said that during like this time period, there were 2,000 baby farmers in London alone in this time period. 2,000 in one city. So they're like, so that should tell you the extent of...
Well, they had a high birth rate.
That's what I'm saying. That's the extent of like the unwanted children. The sad thing about it was that a lot of the kids weren't unwanted. It was just that the women couldn't afford to keep them because they couldn't work. Yeah. They couldn't, you know what I mean? So it's like they didn't have the money. So, because a lot of the babies, and we'll see like with the Amelia Dyer situation, she ended up getting caught just because some of the mothers like wanted their babies back. And like they came there and be like, hey, where's my kid? You know what I mean? Right. Like you're supposed to be taking care of them. So some people did come back and check, and then they started getting suspicious. So it wasn't just that, and I'm not saying that because some women, sadly, did absolutely drop babies off at the baby farmer with the understanding, perhaps, that the baby farmer would
toss that bitch
let the baby die.
Yeah.
They would starve them, or they would give them laudanum, which indirectly led to starvation because it just made them lethargic and they didn't cry anymore. So they would overdose them just to keep them quiet or whatever, and then like a lot of times they would die.
Euthanasia.
Yeah, so that would happen sometimes too. But like I said, I don't want it to seem like everybody that dropped their baby off there was just like, hey, I'm just getting rid of the baby, because some of them did actually intend to come back and get the kids. Just they were in bad circumstances or whatever, and like that's how like I said, Amelia Dyer ended up getting caught.
Those women were in a fucking tough situation. They were in a damn low-income urban environment in a world that has kind of parochial country fucking values of where, you know, no sex until marriage, and fucking if you have a kid out of wedlock, then you're fucked. You know what I mean? That's just a fucking. That was old-fashioned even back in the 1800s. There had to be some kind of mechanism to allow a woman to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And support a baby as a single mother. But that concept wasn't there.
Yeah, they would just take all their options away.
Yeah.
It was almost kind of like, well, we're just going to punish you for opening your legs. Yeah. You know what I mean? But then the thing about it is like, what if they got raped? What if, what if it wasn't consual? What if they hadn't wanted to get pregnant?
Yeah.
Then they're still fucked.
They didn't seem to have the concept that a newborn was a person either. That was just like a thing. So that was just you don't need that. You know what I mean? Because it can't talk, so it's not that. It's not a person. So you know what I mean? It's pretty fucking brutal. It was brutal times, but still that shit was kind of uncalled for. Because all they had to do is just change some laws that says no. You know, if you're a single mom, you can keep the baby and you can work, and you can't say that you can't discriminate against hiring a woman who's a single mom. They could have stopped that.
Well, the thing about, I mean, previous to that stupid law where the dudes didn't have any responsibility anymore, which was passed in 1834, prior to that, they had a little bit of a system where it's like, if you were unwed mothers, or at least you could go, like the parish would usually have, like the church would usually have some money set aside, like in every town or whatever, to take care of women in that situation and babies in that situation. So they did seem to have a little bit set up like that, but then like after that law was passed, they didn't really have that anymore. So like I said, they were kind of taking everyone's options
Nobody
away.
had thought of daycare.
Nobody
had thought of a daycare where you just get a whole bunch of old ladies together and you drop the babies off with the old ladies and they take care of the babies while the women are off to work. It's just that simple. And then you give the old lady a couple pennies a piece per baby, per woman, and then, you know what I mean? That's what daycare is. But for some reason, these idiots never thought of that. And if you ask me, they were idiots. They were idiots. They were intelligent, but there was things about them that just were dumb. And it was across the board. Although people are going to look back at us and say that about us too, you know what I mean? But we're not all that enlightened either. 200 years from now, we're going to be considered savages.
Yeah. Well, like I said, that's just goes to show that, like, you know, we do kind of figure shit out as we go along. It just takes us a while. That's all.
Yeah.
It takes a
Well,
frustratingly
you would think
long time.
somebody would have thought. You think the old ladies?
Well,
the old ladies would have come up with that.
Well,
we
probably
can take care of these babies.
Probably people did think about it, but it just wasn't enough to, like. Yeah. Well, because I mean, you could think about the baby farmers. The way it was set up was kind of like a daycare. In the sense that you would take the kid and then you'd pay. Because some people did actually pay. They had a thing that was called, if you were a nurse children, then you would pay, like, you left the kid there, but, like, you gave them, like, money every week. Yeah. Like, to look after the kid. And you could come back and visit at any time you wanted to. But it's like they would do it so, like, the women could work, you know
They should have done, they should have just done it like a daycare center.
Yeah.
You drop the baby off during the day, you go work your shift. Or at night, you work your shift, and then you come get the baby. Yeah. And then you pay them. Yeah. At the end of the week. Yeah. And that would have been an easy solution. And the fucking baby farmers probably would have, well, they wouldn't have to worry about getting hanged. True. They probably would have made pretty good money doing that.
Yeah. I mean,
a daycare center.
See, but that's the thing. And I think the thing that happened with Amelia Dyer and the thing that happened with the other illegitimate or, like, you know, the evil baby farmers was that they figured, well, we're making all this money from people dropping their babies off here, either permanently or temporarily, but we still have to pay out money to take care of these babies. Yeah. So it would be better if we just got rid of the babies and just kept the money. Yeah. Is basically what they were doing. And, I mean, that's kind of where Amelia Dyer was at.
Maybe they figured that the mothers couldn't afford a daycare service if something like that existed anyway. Maybe they didn't have the money.
Yeah. Well, the thing about it was that, I mean, some of them must have been getting some money from somewhere because Amelia Dyer made all kind of fucking money. Yeah. You know what I mean? And sometimes, like, because one of the women in particular that, whose baby she took, who very much wanted the baby and was, like, just inconsolable that she couldn't afford to keep her and, like, had to, like, drop her off, she paid her £10, which back then was a lot of money. You know what I mean?
That's ridiculous. She had that kind of money. You'd think that she could just hire a nanny. Some old lady to fucking watch the baby for her. Just, you know, one old lady that wanted some extra income. Take care of a baby for a couple of years.
Well, like I said, I mean, the baby farmers,
Maybe
I guess...
that was going on, too.
I think that was probably going on, too. Yeah. And some of the baby farmers, I don't want to make... I mean, baby farmers, it sounds terrible, and a lot of them were, you know, killing the babies, or not even directly killing them, but just, like, neglecting them and, like, leaving them to starve and stuff. But some of them did do what they said they were going to do. It just seems like, you know, I don't know what the percentage was of ones that actually did what they were supposed to be doing versus, no, we're just going to let your baby die.
So you're saying in New Zealand they're trying to stop that, trying to get it so women stop trapping men for getting pregnant. Here's the thing. I could kind of understand it more back in those days, back in the 1800s, because there was no way to prove paternity. Yeah. Because you could have just random women going, it's his baby, pay me. Because they would start fucking accusing people in the royal houses and shit. This is Lord Rothschild's baby. You really couldn't prove it or disprove it. So, but now you can prove it. You know, if the baby's yours, then you're going to have to fucking chip in, man.
Yeah, and I mean, you should. It's like, you know.
You should want to. No, I don't understand that.
I mean, yeah, you would think.
Right, it's your own flesh and blood. Why wouldn't you want to?
Right. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it, too. Yeah, like I said, maybe back in the day, maybe that was an issue because, you know, you didn't have paternity tests. But now it's just, like, very easy. It's very easy to figure out if that's your kid or not. And if it is your kid, then, yeah, I think that you are also partly responsible. So, yeah. So, as I mentioned, some of these baby farmers were legitimate and did actually kind of run... Like I said, they would take the babies in and they would take care of them. Some of them took in pregnant women as well. So they would kind of, like, you know, so the pregnant women could hide out and then they would help them. There were midwives there and stuff, and they would help them have the babies, and then they would take the babies off their hands so the women could go back to work for whatever fee or whatever. However, as I mentioned, some of these baby farmers figured out that, you know, it's very time consuming and very expensive to care for babies, especially like lots and lots of babies. So some of them figured out that, well, maybe we should just let the babies die, because it's the Victorian era. I mean, seriously, this is terrible, but babies died all the time. It wasn't that unusual. I think only Camp Guy said earlier, and this is I believe an accurate statistic, that 50 to 60% of babies didn't even live until they were 5 years old, just because of the conditions. It was just the fucking sanitation, the medical care, was just shitty. So a lot of babies didn't live. So it wasn't that unusual for babies, particularly among the working classes, to die of starvation or to die from what are now very preventable illnesses. So no one thought it was all that unusual. And I think that some of the baby farmers did figure this out, that it was much cheaper to just take in all these babies, get the money, and then just kind of just leave them laying around and not feed them, or like I said, give them fucking laudanum or something like that to keep them quiet, which would eventually lead to them starving as well because they wouldn't eat. One of the things that they used that you could just buy over the counter, because the Victorian era, man, you could just buy all kind of drugs over the counter back then.
You still can in most countries.
Well, yeah. The one that they used was called Godfrey's Cordial, and it was called Mother's Friend. That's what they called it. And it was opium. It was syrup with opium in it. And people did not bat an eye about giving that to your baby if he was being fussy. And if you gave your baby too much of that, then they could OD, obviously. Or it would also make them real lethargic and, like I said, suppress their appetite. So a lot of times, too, if you kept giving it to them, they would stop eating. They wouldn't eat anymore because it took their appetite away. So they would essentially starve to death. So that was something that happened a lot. I was watching a documentary earlier that said back in this era, it was absolutely not unusual to just see dead babies just laying in the fucking gutter. You know what I mean? Because people just...
Oh, baby. Oh, well.
Yeah, it's just that's fucking crazy. It's fucking crazy. If you saw a dead baby nowadays, it'd be lose their fucking... And rightly so, you know what I mean? It's just fucked up that people would just be that callous about it. You know what I mean? It's fucking crazy. So, yeah. So, like I said, it wasn't unusual for babies to die. So no one really thought it was that unusual that all these babies were starving or whatever, in these baby farms. So because Ellen Dane, this midwife that Amelia Dyer had met and told Amelia all about this lucrative practice, Amelia decided, I might get into that. Well, she was kind of interested. And then what ended up happening was that her husband, George Thomas, died. And if you were a married woman back in the Victorian era, your husband died, you were kind of fucked. You're just kind of well, shit, now I don't have any money because he was the one bringing in all the money. So she needed a way to make money. Now, she was a nurse, but I guess that wasn't... she worked at an asylum, actually. But I guess that wasn't pulling in enough dough for her. So she decided, I'm gonna try out this baby farming thing. That sounds pretty fucking easy. And Ellen Dane had told her that it was very lucrative as well. So she started running ads. And she would tell them she was a nurse. She would tell them she was married, which was technically true. But, I mean, she had been married, but she was a widow, actually. And she would basically say, yeah, I'll adopt your baby. Just give me a one-time payment. Give me some clothes for the baby, and I'll take really good care of them. I'm a very stable woman. I have nursing experience, yada, yada. And, I will provide, a loving home for your child. So she did that for a while. Now, at first, I think that she did actually take the babies in and kind of at least make a rudimentary attempt at caring for them. I think. I don't think she just immediately started well, let's just kill them. You know what I mean? But I think it wasn't too long before she hit on the idea, it'd be much cheaper if we just didn't have all these babies around. Yeah. You know what I mean? If we just took the money and...
Well, probably the more she had, the less time she had to canvass for a place to put them.
Right.
She couldn't go out to fucking find them. And then they started piling up on her. And she had no way to get rid of them. And they started to starve.
Yeah. You
know what I mean? And then she's like, oh, shit. Well, I'm going to speed this up. And then new business is coming in the door. Yeah, just put it right over there. Where's the money?
Just put it right over there.
Yeah, put it right over there. I'll take care of it. Okay.
We got room for all kind of babies.
Probably how it...
That's so fucked up.
She might have thought she could actually do it. Think about it. You got to go find homes for these kids. We got to run out of that real soon. He's gonna run out of ideas.
Yeah, because that was kind of the whole.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole premise of baby farming, at least in theory, was that you were either supposed to be like an adoption agency, you were supposed to find a home for this kid, or you were supposed to take care of the kid yourself. Like you were supposed to adopt the kid, essentially.
He started backing up on her.
Yeah.
She couldn't get rid of him.
I just had like a really fucked up, funny mental image of like just piles of babies like in the.
Did you ever see I Love Lucy? Never when you're in the
with the chocolate factory. That's what. Picture that, but babies.
The babies
coming down the fucking whatever you call
that.
that.
Yeah, that's probably what happened. And then she got hardened to it. She's like, well, they're gonna die anyway.
I feel like that's probably how she.
Yeah, these babies are gonna die anyway. Nobody wants them. And like, I'm gonna speed this up and put them out of their misery. Starts giving them stuff, or just toss them overboard. Well, this is faster, better than starving. And then you just throw it like that.
Yeah.
Throw it into the water.
Yeah. Bryce was the one that said about the New Zealand law about men not paying child support. Then he said, I don't understand deadbeat dads.
Well, they got lots of kids. They don't want any more of them, evidently.
I guess, but like I said, if that's your kid, then yeah, you should probably take some
Some
responsibility.
dudes are psychos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that, but I know that people should take responsibility for their shit, but a lot of people don't, which is sad, but oh well. So yeah, so after a while, like I said, I think at first she wasn't just like straight up murdering them. That came later. But she was just neglecting them. Like I said, she was drugging them or just not feeding them or whatever. Like when they were starting to back up, she's like, oh well, they're just like dying, and she would just like dump them someplace. Now, so many babies were dying, though, that in 1879, a doctor got suspicious. Because he's like, there's been like fucking... I think he got suspicious because there had been like over a 2-week period or something like that. There had been like fucking a dozen babies or something like that, like died in this one house. And he's like, yeah, that's a little unusual. So he actually kind of like reported her. And they went and investigated. Now, they didn't find any dead babies at her house, which would have been like a red flag, I'm sure. But they did find some babies that were there that were obviously ill or had obviously been neglected or hadn't been fed or anything like that. So Amelia Dyer was actually arrested in 1879. However, because there was no proof that she had actually killed any of the babies, she only ended up getting 6 months for neglect, right? Now, it was 6 months hard labor, which I'm sure was not fun, but I was listening to another documentary that said what they would do, like, for a lot of times, so, like, especially, like, for the women, like, hard labor, like, obviously they would make them, like, do, like, horrible, like, cleaning and all this other kind of stuff. But they're, like, they would do this one thing where there was, like, some kind of rope or something like that, and they would make you take each of the little like things like off the rope, like pull it all apart like with your bare hands.
To unwind a rope.
Yeah, like just pull it all apart like with your bare hands like all day long, like so all your nails would break off and like your fucking and
because
like,
they didn't have work for you to do, so they just
they would just like give you so they would give you like I don't know if that's true, but I was like watching a documentary that said that was one of the things they did. But yeah, so a lot of people were kind of like offended because she only got 6 months. But like I said, they couldn't prove that she had killed any of the babies because a lot of babies did die of starvation and stuff. It was like a really brutal time, you know what I mean? And a lot of them were poor. So they couldn't really prove that she had killed them. But for sure, they're like, okay, well, there is evidence that she neglected them. But she only got 6 months, which is crazy. I mean, that's still like pretty lenient even for that. You know what I mean? But like I said, like we were saying before, I feel like in this era they didn't really feel like it was almost like a baby wasn't like a full person, you know what I mean? So it wasn't considered like as important as if you'd killed like an adult. No, you know what I mean? Like a
baby was like another species.
That's what I mean. And even like little kids, I feel like they didn't really value children as much as like they do nowadays. You know what I mean? It really didn't seem like they did.
It was up there with like a dog or a cat.
Yeah, they're just like, oh well, we got lots of those.
Yeah.
So she did 6 months hard time. And apparently, after she got out of jail, she was different. The thing about Amelia Dyer, for one thing, she was a big laudanum addict. And she got into that, like, and it just got worse and worse as she got older. And they think maybe that she started to, like, lose her marbles a little bit, but I don't know if that's the case. I think she was kind of faking, but we'll get into that in a little bit. One of the things, though, was that when she got out of jail, she's like, I don't ever want to go back there ever again. So it was almost kind of like, because it was so horrible, but she was like, kind of resolved. She actually resolved for a little while to go straight because she was so afraid of going back to jail. So she actually did, when she got out, like, tried to go back to her nursing career. And she would go and work at mental asylums and things like that. Now, she also spent time not working at mental, hospitals, but inside them, because, like I said, she had a laudanum addiction. She had some kind of, like, she had attempted to suicide, like, several times, things like that. She was not a real stable individual. Although, like I said, a lot of the mental illness, I think, later on, at least, I think she was probably faking. But, you know what I mean? She was also a drunk, so there's that as well. Now, one of the things that happened, so she had been doing, like, all of this shit for a while. Like, she was, she tried to go back to nursing, but I guess she only did that for, like, a year or two, and then it's almost like she couldn't resist, and she went back to baby farming, even though, like I said, she was terrified of going back to jail because it had been so horrible.
Couldn't resist that money.
She couldn't, yeah, I think that's what it was. I think she was just kind of like, the money was so sweet that she's like, yep, I'm just going to go back and do that, even if I do get caught.
Even if I do have to kill these kids.
Yeah, well, and that's pretty much what it ended up doing. It's just kind of like...
She was doing that before.
Right. And so the thing about it was
she's
that...
thinking, well, if I'm not killing them, somebody else is going to kill them. They're going to get the money.
Yeah. And I mean, she almost got caught, like, so many times, too. Yeah. Like, because she did this off and on, mostly on, for, like, 30 years. You know what I mean? Like, she got away with it for a long time. She got away with it for a long time. And she almost got caught a bunch of times. Like, for example, 1890, she actually... Because after she got out of jail and she decided she was going to go back into baby farming, she decided that she was going to try and go for, like, a higher-end clientele. Like, they could afford to pay her more money, right? So, this one family, like a wealthy family, I guess their daughter or the governess or something like that, she had gotten knocked up by somebody, like the rich guy's son or something like that. And they wanted to keep it hushed up, obviously. So she has the baby and she hands it off to Amelia. And then the girl comes back to check on her baby because she's like, I think that woman's kind of sketch. And so, like, she goes back to check on the baby and Amelia straight up is like, no, your baby's right here. And she's like, yo, that's not my baby. And she's like, yeah, it is. Babies change a lot, like in 3 months or whatever. And she's like, pull that blanket aside because the baby had a birthmark on their hip and that baby didn't have that. Right. So Amelia was like trying to pawn another baby off on this girl and she was just like, yeah, not having it. Now,
baby, you know.
Right. They all look alike.
Yeah, I'll say yeah.
Right? But yeah,
same race,
I mean, even before she like looked at the birthmark, she's like, that's not my baby.
Right,
you know?
yeah.
I mean, it's her baby. She knows what the baby looks like. So this girl like reported her, and when she got reported, and this happened more than once, Amelia did like a suicide attempt. Like she drank 2 full bottles of laudanum, which would have killed most people, but she was like an addict, so she was like in order to it, she was resistant to it, so it didn't kill her. Like it almost did, but it didn't kill her. And she started acting kind of crazy, and so they actually put her in an asylum for a little while. Now some people have speculated, they're like, well, it's possible that she was like just really that mentally unstable, but they pointed out that one, her mom had like typhus, and she had like all those like fits and hallucinations and everything like that. And also, Amelia had worked as a nurse in an asylum and would have known what quote-unquote crazy people behavior looked like and would have known like what symptoms to feign in order to get locked up in a hospital. Okay. So some people have speculated that she was just... Because whenever it looked like she was going to get caught for some shit, she'd be like, crazy, I'm crazy, you know what I mean? And she'd get put in a hospital.
Okay, now the girl who came back looking for a baby says that's not mine. How long ago had she given that baby to her?
3 months, I think. I think it was 3 months.
So she killed that baby in a couple of months. She thought that she wasn't coming back? Maybe the average client didn't come back.
Well, some of them didn't.
Yeah.
But what she would do is that... she did a couple of things. one, she would keep like pushing shit off. Like she would write them letters being like, oh, your baby's fine, yada yada. And then another thing she would do, she kept changing her name. Like she had like a bunch of different aliases, and if she thought the heat was getting too much in one place, she like got the fuck out of there and moved someplace else. So she would like move around. So I think that was another thing that made it like take a really long time to catch her. Because the thing about it, like I said, a lot of people that dropped the kids off, you know, some of them did come back and like visit the babies and shit like that, but a lot of them probably didn't.
Back?
No.
Nobody got their baby back.
Not as far as I know, no.
Damn. So she killed all the babies.
Yeah. I think she did. Yeah. I did hear there was like they were talking about there was this one little boy that lived at the house that was a nurse child who I'm assuming he wasn't a baby anymore because he could talk and everything like that. But I guess she didn't kill all the babies, but I think she killed pretty much all the babies. And sometimes she would keep them for a little while, but because sometimes, like I said, she would just like let them die of like neglect or whatever. Yeah. But after a while, she started like just straight up killing them like as soon as she got them. You know what I mean? Because it's like she just didn't want to waste time anymore, I guess.
And okay. And most of the clients didn't come looking for them anyway.
I mean, I would imagine not, or she would have been caught
right
before that.
Right. So she must have known the statistics.
Or she kept she kept like fobbing them off, like right. Just saying it's like, oh, you know, the baby's fine. Or another thing she would do,
give them a new baby.
Well, another thing she would do too is that because some of the people like left the babies there like to be adopted out, and she'd be like, oh, your baby got adopted by this nice family in wherever, you know what I mean? Right. And she'd be like real cagey about it, yeah. But she's like, yeah, the baby's fine. We gave him to this loving family over here and blah blah. Right. And like some people are like, oh, that's good, what a relief or whatever, but. I don't know. It seems like some people did kind of try to look into the shit, but I don't think a lot of people looked too much into it, or she would have been caught prior to. Because, like I said, she was doing this shit for a long time. And like I said, she did move around and like use different aliases and whatnot, so that probably...
Now, the women that came back for the babies, she was under explicit orders to keep the baby for a certain amount of time, and that they were going to come back for it?
Well, the setup was a different setup, like for different people. Some people would come and just give her a flat fee... Yeah. And just leave the baby there with the understanding that she was going to find a home for that baby, or she was going to adopt the baby herself. That was like the one-time fee thing. Now, you also had nurse children, which were a baby that you would drop off, and the baby would stay with them, but you would pay like a weekly maintenance fee with the understanding that you were allowed to come back and visit whenever you wanted.
She was losing track of which one of them...
Probably.
She was losing track
because
who was a nurse baby.
According to... her neighbors and things like that, a lot of babies went through that house. A lot. Yeah. Some people said it was as many as like 6 or 7 a week. Like, so it was like 1 a day pretty much. And there were like some days it was like more than that. It was like 5 or 6 babies a day.
She did this for 30 years.
Pretty much, like off and on.
You're talking about thousands of kids.
Well, like I said, they think like extrapolating there, like even by conservative estimate, it's probably 400 or 500 babies at least that she killed. Probably.
So okay. Wow. So you would think that she'd be smart enough to go, well, they're paying, she keeps getting these checks for kids coming in each month.
Yeah.
So she's getting residuals on kids that are supposed to be alive. You'd think she could have kept straight which ones were nurse children.
Maybe she just didn't give a shit.
Yeah. Maybe she would just go, well, I'll do it for a little while and then I'll move. Before they show up.
Yeah, because she would move around a lot. Right. And like I said, back then you could just change your fucking name like at the drop of a hat. And nobody would be the wiser. You just move to the next town and it's like, hey, I'm Mr. Smith now. You know what I mean? Everybody's like, okay, fair enough. So I think it was that kind of situation also. And like I said, she was really good at coming up with stories for people that inquired about their babies, saying, yeah, we adopted into this family here. And it's blah, blah, blah.
Could be that nurse children would be there for a couple months and usually the checks would stop coming.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so.
So then you're like, okay, well, this kid's a goner. Might be something like that.
Yeah.
Too. But that one girl came back.
Yeah.
Maybe she couldn't keep them straight. Didn't bother to keep them straight. Putting names on the babies and shit. She probably didn't have any names.
Well, like I said, she might have been one of those motherfuckers like, they all look alike.
They're all the same.
Whatever. Yeah. This baby, that baby. It's all. Who cares whose baby it is?
Yeah, they're all just white babies.
Just take a baby.
Yeah.
Just take a baby. No difference. But yeah. So because she had almost been caught because of the doctor you know, being like, why are there so many babies dying at your shit? And she's like, well, you know what? This is like a mugs game, like calling the doctor to certify the deaths, you know, so it looks all above board and everything. So fuck it. I'm just going to start getting rid of the bodies my own self and then not even involve the authorities at all because, you know, that's a rookie mistake, I guess. So she did go back to, after her like freak out and her suicide attempt, and they put her in an asylum and everything like that. But after she got out, she went back to baby farming. And at this point, like I said, she's like, I'm not even going to bother calling the doctors anymore. And I'm just going to basically, when the babies are dropped off, she's just going to kill them and dispose of their bodies like right away. You know what I mean? So what she would do is they would drop the baby off. Now, I think, too, that sometimes, like I said, because I think she also partially ran, like, a confinement home, like, for pregnant girls. So, like, when women would come there that were pregnant and she would, like, take care of them for a little while, because she had, like, some midwifing experience and shit like that, too. And sometimes what she would do, and I think other baby farmers did this, too, is they would help the woman have the baby, but then they would smother the baby, like, as soon as it came out the womb. And they're like, and what they would usually do is they would do it, like, right away, because if you didn't, then the baby would breathe, and then, like, if you tried to smother them after that, then they'd turn blue, and so everybody would be like, oh, well, the baby was breathing, what the fuck happened? So they tried to make it look like a stillbirth, is what they would do, which, like I said, wasn't unusual for the time.
And the mom was in on it?
No. I don't think the mom was in on it. She didn't really know what was going on.
Well, what did they have to gain from that? She didn't want the baby?
Well, no, but she had paid, like, for... Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's that. And they're like, oh, too bad, so sad. Like, your baby is stillborn, you know what I mean? But you still owe us money, so cha-ching, you know what I mean? It was that kind of situation. So they would do that kind of shit, too. So what she would start doing was that the person, she would run an ad. The person would be like, okay, well, you know, take my baby for 10 pounds or however much it was, you know, and please find the baby a home. She would take the baby home, and then she would take, you know, dressmaker's tape that they would use to, like, tape up hems and shit like that if you were sewing. She would take dressmaker's tape and just tie it in a knot around the baby's neck and just watch them suffocate, watch them strangle.
Yeah.
And then she would wrap the baby up in, like, brown parcel paper, tie it up with string, put a brick in there, and throw it in the river. So that's what she would do. And after a while, and she even said this out loud, and like I said, I don't think she intended to start out doing this, but after a while, I think she started to enjoy it, because she even said out loud that she liked watching the babies, like, with the tape around their necks. You know what I mean? So I think she was kind of getting off on it after a while when she was getting older.
She said she liked to watch that, huh?
Yeah.
Who'd she say that to?
I think she maybe said that after she got caught. Like, that was, like, in her... Because she wrote, like, this big, long confession, like, after she got caught. But, yeah. So 1893. She had been confined to a mental asylum again, because, like I said, it seemed like she was going to get caught. So she's like, I'm crazy. She did that. She pulled that shenanigans again. So then they let her out, and she was at a workhouse, and she met this old lady who was in her 70s, whose name was Jane Smith, who they called Granny Smith, not like the apple, I'm assuming. Now, Amelia goes to this woman and basically says, hey, I have a baby farm. I don't know if they called it that, but she's like, I have a baby farm, and you'd be perfect. You could come to my house and help me take care of all these babies, and we're going to save all these unwanted babies and all this other. She gave her, like, this really, like, she gave her a fucking line, you know what I mean? And Granny was, like, all into it. She, like, Granny didn't know what the fuck, like, she didn't know that Amelia Dyer was a total monster, right? She, like, totally bought into, she's like, I love babies. I will help you take care of babies. So, Jane Smith moved in, and what ended up happening, though, was that Amelia at that point, and like I said, this is, like, Amelia at this point, I think was in her 40s or 50s, but, you know, Granny was, like, 70-something, and she'd been in a workhouse. And back then, like, they didn't have Social Security or retirement or nothing like that. It's like, you basically, if you were poor, you were in a workhouse. If you could work, you worked. Otherwise, they were just like, get the fuck out, and you just, like, fucking starved in the street is what happened. But, yeah, so this old lady was basically like, okay, well, it's better than the workhouse. But she ends up at Amelia's house, and Amelia ends up just like, hey, why don't you, like, fucking clean my house and cook? So she, like, put her to work, basically. So, also, she had help from, and there's kind of speculation about this too, but she Amelia, this might surprise you, but she had a daughter also, whose name was Mary Ann, even though they called her Polly. And her daughter had married, and so they were also helping out around the baby farm. And like later on, there was some speculation about how much they knew about it,
Probably
like
quite a
about
bit.
what was going on. But like I said, we'll get into that in a little bit. So yeah, so then they moved, and then Amelia started using Granny as kind of like to burnish her image as like, look, this is this kindly old lady, and I'm her daughter. You know what I mean? Like she would call the old lady Granny, and she told Granny to call her mother. So it's like, so they would look all wholesome and shit.
Yeah.
So that was like another way of, like I said, Granny didn't seem to know anything about the nefariousness of what was going on. She just kind of got roped into this bullshit. But yeah, so Amelia was totally using her as, you know, a grandmotherly type, so people wouldn't be as suspicious, right? Because like I said, she moved, so she was starting anew. So one of the cases that gets brought up a lot, this is like, and this is very emblematic of like what she would do, was there was this woman, this happened in 1896. There's this woman named Evelina Marmon, and she was a barmaid. She was 25, and she got pregnant out of wedlock, and she had a baby daughter whose name was Doris, and this was in Cheltenham. Now she actually put an ad in the newspaper for someone to care for Doris or to adopt her, because she couldn't afford to take care of her, even though she very much wanted the baby, but she couldn't afford to take care of her. So she ran an ad, and the ad said, wanted respectable woman to take young child, so she could go back to work, because she, obviously needed to work. Now, in the same newspaper, crazily, was Amelia's ad. Amelia's ad said, married couple, lie, with no family, would adopt healthy child, nice country home, £10. So, Evelina was kind of like, okay, well, that sounds exactly like what the doctor ordered, right? So she wrote to this woman. Now, at this point, Amelia Dyer was using the pseudonym Mrs. Harding. That was what, because like I said, she was Mrs. Harding, she was Mrs. Thomas, she had all the kind of different names. So Mrs. Harding, aka Amelia Dyer, she writes back to Evelina, and she's like laying it on thick. Oh, I've always wanted a little baby girl. I would bring her up and call her my own, and blah blah blah. So like she really like gave her a fucking line, right? And she's basically like, I don't want a child for money's sake, but for company and home comfort. Myself and my husband are dearly fond of children. I have no child of my own. Yeah, and like I said, this is all complete bullshit. So basically, Evelina, she went there, and she didn't necessarily want to just give a one-time fee and like give her daughter away. You know what I mean? She wanted to do more of like a weekly thing. She's like, I'll pay a little bit a week, and then when I can afford to take the baby back, I'll take the baby back, because she wanted to keep the baby. She just couldn't afford to. But eventually Amelia was able to talk her into, no, just give me the £10 and I'll take your kid. You know what I mean? And Evelina was not super happy about it, but just like she didn't really know what else to do, and she was kind of like desperate. So she actually gave Amelia the baby, Doris, and gave her £10 and gave her like a box of the baby's clothes. And sadly, they left at the train station, and that was the last time that Evelina ever saw her daughter alive again. So yeah, she wrote to Mrs. Harding and said, hey, how's the baby doing? And, Amelia writes back, and she's like, oh, she's totally fine. Everything's fine. I'll write you again on the weekend. But she never wrote back. She just didn't. So basically, as soon as Amelia got home with this baby, she did what she did with the other babies, with the dressmaking tape and all that.
Strangled it.
Yep. And, yeah. So then they wrapped the baby up in, like a napkin. And, they took some of the clothes to a pawn shop, which is fucked up. And, also gave some of the kids' clothes to, like, their landlady, like, for her daughter, which, again, is pretty fucked up. And, then there was another baby who happened to be, this is fucked up, too, because it seemed like whenever the authorities, like, searched the house, they did find like some alive babies that were kind of like sickly or whatever, but they never found any dead babies. But at one point there was a dead one, like, and I'm like, how does this situation arise? You have all these babies, and it's like there's like a baby, like a dead baby, like in a package, like in a cupboard somewhere.
What? How
and then it's like, and then it was in there for a while because it like started to stink. Until somebody like complained. I don't know how long it was in there, but until like
throw it away.
Somebody, yeah, and it was just like, well, what? You didn't like. Well, I'm just gonna tuck this dead baby up here in the fucking. What the fuck is that all about? And I was just like, I was horrified when I fucking heard that. So yeah.
Well, you said that just tucking dead babies up, and it reminds me of I saw this urban exploration. It was either in Detroit or somewhere in Baltimore. There was an abandoned embalming place, like a mortician's house. What do you call that?
Yeah.
Funeral home.
Yeah.
And they were going through there, and there was still bodies in there, and they'd been left in there a long time. And one of them was a bunch of boxes of little babies that were up in the ceiling. 5.
I'd hated to be the person to open that box.
Yeah, 5. Well, they were mummified.
Yeah. Still.
They were mummified in there. They called the cops. Cops showed up. There was a fucking box of babies up in there.
See, I don't know.
From the boxes. Yeah, and it was because I'm
always afraid it's going to be something like
funeral that. The funeral home fucking was going bankrupt, and they were just taking people's money and the bodies and then not processing them.
Oh, I remember hearing about
that kind of shit.
Yeah.
And the place had been fucking abandoned, and evidently because those people were all legally dead and the paperwork done and everything, nobody came to fucking dispose of those bodies. They just stayed in there.
Yeah.
The county's like, fuck them.
Well, I mean, yeah.
They're already on record as being dead. Fucking, they're just not buried. They're in that fucking building. That's fucking creepy.
That is creepy.
Yeah.
That sounds like a horror story waiting to happen right there. They're gonna get up and start walking around.
Yeah.
They
had one guy who was embalmed, and
yeah.
he was in a like a cardboard box or casket type. He was in a casket. He was embalmed though, but he was just sitting there. Yeah, and he looked pretty fucking stale.
That guy.
He looked pretty fucking stale.
Well, let's see how you look after being dead for that long.
I've been in there a couple years embalmed.
But yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So she had killed Doris, the baby, with the white edging tape. And then I guess she also had another baby laying around that needed killing. But she didn't have any edging tape left. So she took the tape off of Doris's neck and then wrapped it around this other baby's neck because, economical. This other baby's name was Harry Simmons. It was like a little boy. So then she takes... he was 13 months old. So then she takes both of these bodies.
That's pretty old.
Yeah, that's like over a year old. That's like toddler age.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this wasn't like a newborn. You know what I mean? I don't know how long she'd had him. You know what I mean? I don't know how long she'd had him.
He'd have been big enough to fight back.
Well, I don't know, a 1-year-old. I don't know about that.
I thought isn't a 1-year-old big enough to kind of resist?
I guess, but it's still a baby. I mean, she was a big, stout woman.
Yeah.
So, it was like in her 50s. But yeah, she looked like a big bruiser actually. But so she puts these two babies in this carpet bag and then puts a bunch of bricks in it. And then they went over, thank you, Victor. Hey, I made it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Victor, man, I'll tell you what, man. All these what do you call this? All these baby farms made you gay.
Baby farms.
Baby farms made you gay. You missed it.
This is a fucked up story.
It's a fucked up, bro.
And I've been like watching documentaries about these two cases for like the last 2 or 3 days, and it's just like, this is really bumming me out. It's really, and I watch true crime all the time, and it doesn't bum. But for some reason, this one really bums me out because it's a lot of babies, and it's just, and I don't understand how anybody could do that.
There was excess population, and she was taking care of it.
I mean, single-handedly, Jesus Christ! Think of all the fucking. I mean, if it was really 400 babies, which, like I said, is not crazy. I mean, it sounds crazy, but it was a long time period that she was operating.
Yeah.
And it's not, when you think about it in context, that's really only a few a month, you know what I mean? Which, that sounds pretty reasonable to me, like, considering what she was doing.
The saddest part is that some of them girls wanted those babies and tried to come back for them.
Yeah, that's what's fucked up. And it's like, it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. So, yeah. So she puts these 2 babies in this carpet bag and puts a bunch of bricks in there. And then she throws them into the Thames. Now, interestingly, right around the same time, I think like a day or two, March, April, like prior to this, there was a guy in the Thames who was a barge man. So he was like, on his little boat or whatever. And he found a package in the Thames that had a dead baby in it, a baby girl. Now, this was a different baby. This baby was named Helena Fry. And he obviously went to the police. He's like, hey, I found a package with like a dead baby in it. That's not right. Now, in this particular package, which had, I guess she had tried to weight it down, but it hadn't worked. She didn't put enough weight in it or something like that because it was still kind of like floating. Now, when they opened this box and found the dead baby in there, the paper that the baby had been wrapped in had like a train ticket from Temple Meads Station in Bristol, and it also had a name and an address on it. Now, the name was Mrs. Thomas. They didn't know that was one of her aliases at the time, but they found it later on. But it did have the address on it. So they were able to figure out, like, from this address, they went and, interviewed all the neighbors and stuff like that, and they were able to triangulate and figure out that Mrs. Thomas was actually Amelia Dyer. You know what I mean?
Why the hell did she have that shit in there with that baby?
Because she's a dumbass.
Damn.
She's a dumbass.
Interesting.
Like I said, these are not... Baby batter made me gay.
The baby batter, baby butter.
Baby batter.
Baby batter. Oh yeah, baby batter. Yeah, I know what you're talking about now. I'm not gay. I didn't have the. But yeah,
well, I'm not gay either, but
it's like
I knew what it was.
I never heard it referred to that.
Really, you never heard that term
Never heard
before?
that before.
I thought that was pretty common.
No,
I've heard it lots of times.
never heard of that.
I've heard it lots of times.
It's a girl thing.
It's not a girl thing.
Dudes have never called it that.
I don't think
I've
that's
never
the
heard
case.
any dudes ever call it that.
Well, yeah. Well, you don't know every dude in the world.
Listen to her.
Well, you have a thing where it's just like, well, I've never heard of it, so therefore it doesn't exist. I'm just like, you know what I mean? I've heard that lots of times. I've heard a lot of people say
The
that.
kind of dudes I hang out with don't fucking say that.
Okay, well, that's fair enough.
All
Then.
right.
But yeah.
Warlock's Motorcycle Club's not gonna fucking call it baby batter.
Well, no,
Fucking
but like I
101st
said,
Airborne Division's not
but
gonna call
other
it baby
people
batter.
call it that.
Okay.
Other people call it that.
All right.
I mean, I think that's kind of a gross phrase, but it is kind of funny and
It's the
descriptive.
batter that makes babies.
Yeah, like pancakes.
Yeah.
Pancake babies.
Yeah.
Pancakes. But now that makes me
And
want.
it's making
Maybe that makes me
and
want
it's making
pancakes.
Victor gay. Okay. All right.
It's making Victor gay, and it makes Jenny want pancakes. So, or waffles. That would be good too. But yeah.
It makes her hungry.
Yeah.
Just hearing it.
So dirty. So dirty, Tom.
Yeah.
But this is terrible. But yeah, so they see this address. They actually do figure out it's Amelia Dyer. Now, there's not enough, just because the paper is in there, that doesn't necessarily mean that she killed the baby, right? I mean, it could be lots of it. Maybe whoever killed the baby got the paper somewhere else or something like that. Like I said, it's not definitive, even though we know, and I know that she was the one that killed that baby, but you know what I mean? They can't prove it. So what they decided to do, so they do like all of these, they interviewed all these witnesses and stuff like that, and then they decide that they're going to put her under surveillance. Like, so for a while, because they did that back then too, which is crazy. But yeah, so they put Amelia Dyer under surveillance because they're like, let's see what this bitch is up to. So they decided, and this was like actually pretty good thinking for Victorian era police, not only putting her under surveillance, but they're like, we're going to do a sting operation, and we're going to, recruit a young woman who ostensibly has a baby to give her, and we're going to see how that goes down. You know what I mean? So they did do that. Like, so they kind of like set everything up. So they set a meeting and everything like that. Now, because of the way that they set the meeting up, she's supposed to go meet this girl who was actually like the bait in this trap or whatever. And then when Amelia Dyer like showed up at the meeting, like it was actually the authorities, and they were just kind of like, you're under arrest, bitch, pretty much. But yeah, so it was that. They and then the cops raided her house, and when they went in there, they didn't find any bodies, although the whole house smelled like human decomposition. So there was that. But they did find a bunch of other evidence, even though they didn't find any bodies. They did find like a whole bunch of the white dressmaker's tape, just like the kind that had been found. Because the thing about it was that after they found those babies in the Thames, they started searching more, and they found, I think one documentary said they ended up finding like 50 babies. She didn't kill all of them, I don't think, because she said to the cops, this is fucked up. She said to the cops, she's like, oh, well, you'll know which ones are mine because of the white tape. So I guess that like they found some other ones that didn't have that. She's like, yeah, I didn't do that one. Like, that was somebody else. Which, like I said, that's fucked up, right? But like I said, back then there were a lot of unwanted children, so not everybody, like sometimes people would have babies and their babies would die or they would starve or whatever, and they would just throw it in the river because everybody just threw everything in the Thames back then. It was so polluted. But yeah, so she basically said, that's how you'll know which dead babies are mine, because they'll have the white tape around their necks. That's how, because they found other ones. They found like 50 babies when they like started crawling around in there.
It's funny how she left the tape on the neck. It's like a serial killer thing. Why
that's what I mean. See, that's why I don't think, because nothing in her history like suggests that she was like super messed up or like, you know, serial killer material or anything like that, at least that I know of. But I think as time went on, I think she started out with the baby. I don't think she intended at first to just get to kill all these babies. I think at first she's like, oh, well, I can make more money if I just let them die, which other baby farmers did too, to be fair, because it's cheaper. So I think at first it was just pragmatic concerns. She was just trying to make more money. But then after a while, I think she just got kind of inured to it. And then I think she started to get off on it. It seemed like to me. I don't know her, and she's been dead a long time. But just the progression of the crimes, the way that they progressed, it did seem like she got a taste for it after a while, and she was kind of getting into it, which is like, messed up.
Why leave the fucking string around the neck?
Right.
You could just remove that. You're leaving a calling card on it.
Yeah,
You're leaving your mark
and it's
on
almost like she seemed kind of proud of it, because she does tell the cops when they found all those dead babies in the river that, you know, you'll know which ones are mine because of that. So it's almost like she was proud of it.
Yeah.
Like the way she's said
marking them.
So I think after a while, even though I don't think this is what she intended from the start, but I think like as the years went on, she kind of started getting to like enjoy it.
Yeah, because if you find the baby and it's got that tied around its neck, you know that baby was killed.
Yeah.
It wasn't stillborn or anything. It was,
right.
It was
yeah, because if you just threw it in the river, like you could say, oh, well, it was born
it
dead.
died on its own.
Or it starved or whatever.
Right.
But it's like that's, you know, that pretty much takes away all doubt. Like that, you know, the baby was murdered.
Yeah, that's weird.
But yeah.
She was marking it.
Yeah. So that's why I think that after a while she just started getting into it, like getting off on it. Which is very serial killer behavior. Yeah. I don't think she intended it. She started out like that, but I think it was just practical at first. But
it became learned behavior.
Yeah. I mean, killing that many babies, that obviously is going to harden you, right? I mean,
yeah.
I can't imagine doing that one time, much less 400 times, or how many fucking times she did it. Maybe more. So, I mean, she can't have been
these are babies that are born. You know what I mean? Fucking, that's cold blood.
That's what I mean. That is like fucking, that is like, ugh. I don't know how anybody could do that. I don't know. Yeah. Like I said, I can't even kill a bug, really. So, it's, you know, I can't even kill a spider, so much less. So, much less like a baby that's like squalling and stuff. I can't imagine. Yeah. So, yeah, so they raid her house. Like I said, they didn't find any bodies in there, but it stunk like human remains. They did find all the dressmaker's tape. They found like just a treasure trove of telegrams about you know, people contacting her and like her making arrangements to like pick babies up and shit like that. They found like a whole bunch of pawn tickets for children's clothing, because that was another thing she would do. She'd take their clothes and shoes that the parents brought for the babies, and then she would just go pawn it for money. That was another thing she did. So that's shitty. Also had like all the ads that she had run, and all of the letters that from the moms, like writing to her, like asking how the babies were and shit like that. So they found all that like in her house. Now, they calculated that just in the last couple of months before they raided her house, that there, at least according to neighbors and witnesses and stuff like that, there had been at least 20 babies going in there and not coming out again alive. So at least 20, just in the couple of months before they caught her. And they thought too, like when they raided her house, it looked like she was starting to pack up to move again because she thought like the heat was getting too much, right?
Was she living large?
I don't know. I don't think she was I never saw anything that said she was like living conspicuously wealthy or anything like that.
So she wasn't making that much profit off this.
I mean, apparently it was a very lucrative business, but I don't know if she was like showing off the wealth. I think she was too worried that she was going to get caught. Because like I said, a couple years before she got caught, there was another woman named Margaret Waters. I think her name was Margaret Waters. And she was doing a similar thing, and she got caught and hanged. And that kind of freaked Amelia out, and she like went kind of on the down low for a little while because she was
found with money though. Did she have money at the time of her arrest?
I don't know. But like I said, everything that I read said that she made a lot of money.
Right.
But I don't know if she was like splashing it around. Maybe she just wasn't a real extravagant person, but she was just greedy.
Right.
She was just greedy.
Okay.
She
So
just
wasn't really living hand to mouth.
No.
Okay.
No. And I mean, she could afford to like move around whenever she wanted to,
yeah.
and like move to houses and shit like that. So
yeah, she probably always had a fucking money stashed up.
I would imagine
A moving away fund.
And like I said,
business.
especially after Margaret Waters got hanged, which was 2 years before Amelia Dyer got caught, I think. The government started like cracking down and like looking, well, maybe we should regulate this shit. Look at this bullshit right here. And so Amelia Dyer and some of the other baby farmers that were doing the same shit that she was doing were like, yeah, we need to kind of like keep this shit on the down low because we're going to get caught too. And they didn't want to get hanged either, but it almost seemed like she, like when she went to jail, like when she went to prison for 6 months, for neglect. And that was even before she started murdering the babies. That was just when she was kind of like letting them die or just like helping them along a little bit. She kind of, it almost seemed like she vowed, like, after she got out, she's like, oh, I really don't want to go back to jail. So she was going to try and go legit. Like, she went back to nursing and stuff like that. But then it seemed like she couldn't resist it.
It's too hard. The work is too hard to be.
That's what I mean. And I don't think it was necessarily just the money. Yeah. And that was another thing that a lot of the documentaries brought up. They're like, it's a lot easier work than nursing. That's for sure.
And you have to have a boss when you're nursing. Fucking,
right.
When she's killing babies, she's a fucking captain of her own ship. She doesn't have to listen to anybody.
Yeah, she just takes them babies, and like I said, it's easy. She doesn't really have to do anything, other than
store the baby until it dies.
Yeah, and or other than like make up all these stories to the parents like about where the baby went and all this other kind of stuff. But other than that, like it's a lot easier than nursing, especially back then. So because of the amount of, the period of time that she was doing this, the amount of letters, the amount of parents that were looking for their kids, the amount of all the stuff that they found in her house and stuff, there have been estimates, even though she was technically only hanged for I believe 3 murders because of the three babies that they found in the Thames, that they knew were hers. They speculate that operating as she did, conservative estimate, probably between 400 and 500 babies that she killed. But yeah,
probably twice that.
Yeah, and it may be more. They've said if she was quicker than that, because everybody that was witness, everybody that lived near her, like wherever she lived and stuff like that, said there was babies in and out of there all the time. And actually, it was off and on. And the thing about it too was that Granny, the woman that was living with her, she didn't know what was going on at first, but she kept thinking, I mean, she wasn't super bright, but I mean, she was like, all these babies, and she loved babies, like she wasn't like evil or anything. So it's like, she's like, all these babies would come in, and then just like the next day they'd be gone, and like she didn't really know what happened to them. And after a while she started getting suspicious, so she went and reported Amelia also, like after a while, because she's like, there's got to be something going on, because I don't know where the fuck all these babies are going.
So she get rid of both of them. She would get rid of a lot of them in one day, huh?
Yeah, sometimes she would just go she would go like on the train to wherever the mother was and pick the baby up and take, get the box of clothes and the money. Then she would come back home, and then pretty much she would immediately kill the baby.
Damn.
It seemed like. Most of the time.
Yeah, didn't want that trouble.
Yeah, because like I said, why spend money like feeding the baby or
Yeah, it's a waste of money.
Or
You
listening
kill
to
baby.
or listening to baby crying or whatever, when you could just like fucking strangle him and just the problem would be solved. You know what I mean? So yeah. So Amelia gets arrested on April 4th of that year, and she gets charged with murder. Now, as I said, her daughter, Polly, and her son-in-law, whose name is Arthur Palmer, were charged alongside of her as accessories. But this is crazy to me, because this is a woman who has killed perhaps 400 to 500 babies. But she did not want her daughter and son-in-law to go to prison. So because she was afraid that they would get in trouble too, she basically just confessed to the whole thing and said, yeah, I did it all myself. They didn't do anything. So they got off. I don't know how much they knew. I suspect they probably knew what was going on because they were in and out of the house. But she was adamant.
Probably helped.
They might have. But she was adamant that they not get in trouble. So she confessed to everything. Like she wrote these big like fucking notebooks and notebooks full of a confession. You know what I mean? So yeah. And basically they didn't really find any evidence that her daughter and son-in-law had known anything about it, but I don't know. They were kind of in and out, so I suspect they probably did. So
did she explain in her notebooks how she progressed and went through this and what she was thinking?
Like I said, I've read some of it. She's not real. I don't want to say she's not articulate, but I mean she can't spell. That's for one thing. But she does seem to know that what she did was horrible. But I don't know. It almost seems like she got into a situation where it just kept escalating and escalating, and at every stage, I don't know, it just seemed like that frog in boiling water thing. Yeah. You know what I mean? Where it just seemed like she kind of got started doing it. It was like, yeah, and had every intention at first of like taking in these babies, and then she's like, oh man, these babies are like so noisy, and you have to feed them, and it costs money, and all this other stuff. And then she's like, maybe it is better to just kind of like give them laudanum, and oh no, it died. You know what I mean? And then she's just kind of like, well, let's just hasten this along. You know what I mean? So I think at every stage, she was just kind of like, it was like practical concerns. But like I said, I think in the end, I think she was starting to get off on it.
It became routine, and then she started to like it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened. So, so in May of 1896, she showed up at the Old Bailey, and she actually pleaded guilty to only one murder. Doris Marmon, who was, Evelina's baby. Now, so basically, it came out later, like I said, that she'd almost been caught like lots of times, because a lot of people were suspicious about what she was doing. How could you not be? Because she did move around a lot, and she had like different aliases and shit like that. But I mean, if you were in a place for any length of time, like your neighbors would notice like all of these babies coming in and out. It's like, hey, where'd that one go? And it's like, yeah, she always had excuses like, oh, we adopted them out because that's what they're supposed to be doing. But a lot of people were suspicious. It wasn't just Granny. It was like some other people that were suspicious too, but they couldn't prove anything. You know what I mean? So yeah. Now, the only thing, I mean, what could she say pretty much? The only defense she offered was insanity, which she did kind of have a leg to stand on because she had been in and out of mental asylums. However, most modern researchers believe that although she was for sure a laudanum addict big time, and maybe had some history of mental illness in her family, and maybe she had like legit like tried to commit suicide a couple times and everything like that, but they think that because she had a lot of experience with mental illness, being a nurse in an asylum and like having gone through her mother's illness and stuff like that, that she knew how to fake it, essentially. Because it did seem, it seemed kind of convenient that whenever she was about to get caught or she thought she was going to get in trouble, she would all of a sudden have an episode and they would put her in an asylum for a while and then kind of until like the heat blew over. You know what I mean? So a lot of people thought that was suspicious. So I don't really think anyone bought it. And I think that like people did come in and like assess her and stuff, like, psychologists assess her and stuff like that. They're like, nah, she knew what she was doing. She's not crazy. So yeah, but that was like pretty much the only thing she could say. I mean, really. Now, this is crazy. So if Mary Pearcey's jury only took 52 minutes to convict her, Amelia Dyer's jury took only 4.5 minutes.
Yeah, they're like,
this bitch here.
Gonna die, yeah.
Yeah. So while she was in there, like I said, she wrote this like 5 notebooks full of like fucking her confession or whatever. And on the night before she was executed, the prison chaplain comes in and said, "Do you have anything to confess?" And she gave him the books and said, "Is this enough?" You know what I mean? So, now, interestingly, this is crazy too. So she got executed, right? On June 10th, 1896. Because like I said, they didn't fuck around back then. I think it was just 3 weeks between her getting the death sentence and her swinging from a rope.
They just got it over with, man. You didn't want to sit around prison waiting for that shit.
Yeah, they basically...
Food sucked. Might as well just fucking go.
Yeah. Interestingly, not too long after she was killed... maybe it was it a year or 2 years, something like that. I can't remember exactly. But there was an incident at a train station where a baby was left in a box, like on the train tracks, like left there to die. But thankfully, people like the porters at the railroad like found the baby like before, and they saved the baby. And when they found out who had left the baby, guess who it was? It was Polly. It was Amelia's daughter. So, carrying on the family business, I see. Like, leaving babies out to die and shit like that. That's really nice. But yeah, I think that was a couple years after.
She wanted to try to get rid of her own daughter.
No.
Oh, what was it?
No. Polly, Amelia's daughter.
Yeah.
Who was grown. She was an adult.
It wasn't her daughter?
No, it was a random ass baby.
Oh, okay.
She just like left the baby in a box, like at a fucking train track or some shit like that. So they surmised that, she's doing the same shit her mom was doing.
I'm telling you, man. They were helping.
I think they were probably helping. But like I said,
I thought then she left her own baby there.
No, I don't think it was her. It was just a random ass baby. So yeah. Now after Amelia Dyer, obviously it took a couple of years, but a lot of the laws were changed. By the way, Amelia Dyer is also known as the Ogress of Reading.
Yeah.
Which, a little bit.
Right.
But yeah, there's even like a song about her and shit like that, like an old ballad or whatever. So, but what they did after her case, because it was like such a huge fucking scandal, and like I said, the Margaret Waters case had been a couple years before too. So the public was kind of like, there was a huge outcry. So basically they started regulating shit more. Like they made adoption laws much stricter. And they still allowed baby farms, but they had like more oversight. Like they had, people coming in and checking on them and things like that, because the whole system prior to that, you didn't need a license. There was no regulation. There was no oversight. There was nobody checking on any of that shit.
Babies were low value.
That's what I mean. So it was just like, so the whole system was just like ripe for exploitation. And, but after that, like after the magnitude of what had happened, like kind of dawned on everybody, they're like, yeah, we really need to like fucking.
Yeah, I'd imagine British society was shocked that
they were
horrified.
Would
probably kill fucking 1,000 kids.
They were horrified.
Yeah.
So,
they
yeah.
didn't understand fucking the magnitude.
I mean, I don't understand the magnitude. That is fucking crazy to me.
I can imagine it.
Well, like I see how it happened.
Yeah.
Especially back then, but it's still like horrifying to think that you actually like probably killed like 400 fucking babies.
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy to me. And this, like I said, this fucking bummed me out. But
shit like this could be happening for all we know in real fucking poor neighborhoods in pretty poor countries. You know what I mean? Fucking where, Bangladesh, somewhere in a poor neighborhood in Bangladesh or somewhere in India, you might have a situation where unwed mothers are not allowed and they just throw the baby away. That might actually exist still.
Yeah, it probably
you can
does.
see that was the stage that England was in at that time. You know what I mean? Which is, what was funny is late 1800s, England was kind of like one of the leaders of the world.
Yeah.
So we're sitting here talking about how bad it was. That was like one of the best places in the world to live.
Yeah, so everywhere else was like worse than that.
Fucking terrible. Yeah. Well, America was good too. It was more country living in most of it. But you had to fight to make it out there. You're in Indian territory, and those Indians may or may not be friendly where you're living. Or, late 1800s, a lot of that was over by that time. But America had its own problems too. It's just, best thing about America compared to England of the late 1800s is it tended to be better food, more fresh water, less population density. Like the South was in the 1800s pretty rich compared to a lot of places in Europe, and even the poor people ate well because it was subsistence farming. Every house grew their own shit. That's why even to this day, food is just like a religion in the South. It's like that in Mexico. So the more you go south, the more independent the people are, the more they fucking farm their own lands and shit, the more food is a fucking religion. But you couldn't do that in a city.
Yeah.
You can't do that in a city. So England, England was like that only in the country. And I think only rich people lived in the country in England.
Well, I mean, if you were poor, you kind of had to live in the city.
Yeah,
that's where the work
was.
Yeah. It's kind of, But yeah, so much like the Mary Pearcey case, where people have speculated that she is a suspect for Jack the Ripper or Jill the Ripper, if you prefer, Amelia Dyer has also been put forward as a suspect for Jack the Ripper. Although, like I said, that one seems like even more of a reach because the MO is completely different. Because as I mentioned, she didn't, she's much more like an Angel of Death style killer, which we did a show about a while back, which is usually what women killers are. That's usually, if they kill a lot of people, that's usually what they do. They kill babies, or they kill elderly people, or they poison people in hospitals, or shit like that. They do shit like this. So she's not really killing people in the same manner as Jack the Ripper was. Mary Pearcey, like I said, yeah, she slashed that woman's throat and beat the shit out of her, like, with a fireplace poker, which, like I said, is more in line with what Jack the Ripper did, but not really the same motive, I feel like. So I don't really feel, and I don't even know how I feel about that whole Jack the Ripper was a woman thing.
No.
I don't buy it. Like, and like I said, it's not a new theory. Like, people were talking about that, like, even back in the early 20th century, like late 19th century, early 20th century. Like, people were throwing that idea around, but like,
No.
I don't see it. I don't see it. That, like I said, that seems like
that was a man's crime.
That is a very man crime,
and
a very man-oriented crime.
It took strength to do a lot of the shit that was done in the Ripper case, and the attacks were sexual. He's removing sexual organs and stuff. It was the focus on faces, breasts, and badges. A lot of it.
Yeah.
And so that was a sexual thing. It was a man doing that.
Yeah.
Oh, fucking psycho.
Whereas these two, there wasn't neither of these crimes had a sexual motive, obviously. And that, the first crime, that seemed like more like a crime of passion, like a jealousy type of crime, and the second one was practical reasons, like monetary gain that went into maybe getting off on it.
The Ripper cases were premeditated stalking. He was an organized killer. That's how he got in and out of there.
Yeah.
He was wearing a disguise or something.
And like I said, he wasn't noticed, really. Like, he didn't stick out all that much. So
he was walking around with the tools that he needed and wearing what he had to wear in order to get in and out of there without being noticed. And he may have had transportation. You don't know.
Yeah. And I don't know if we'll ever know, which is kind of a bummer because it was such a long time ago.
Transportation in those days would have been a carriage. And I don't know. Maybe a carriage would have cost too much, attract too much attention. He probably just walked.
One of the reasons...
There was something about him that didn't attract attention.
And I had just forgotten about this until we were just talking about it. One of the reasons that... and I think this was a couple years ago that this happened. But there was kind of a big... like a big public thing. Because you know how they did DNA testing on the stamps that were on the Jack the Ripper letters?
Yeah.
And the DNA on there, they're pretty sure that that was a woman's DNA. Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the killer licked the stamp.
And it also doesn't mean that was the killer that wrote those letters.
Right.
The one that sent the From Hell letter with the piece of kidney in it, they never verified that was a human kidney. That might have been something bought from a fucking butcher shop. It might have been a fucking sheep's kidney.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think there was any way of determining.
Not back then.
Back then.
And if it was just a piece of kidney, it probably wasn't the whole kidney. It was just like, that's a piece of kidney. But it's something I got at a butcher shop. Because they had hoax letters happening and people
all the time.
Cops.
That's not new either.
Yeah.
Every time there was like a crime that was like real sordid or it was in the papers, you'd have all kind of crazy people being like, "Yeah, I did that shit," or like written, same as now.
There's a good chance that the Ripper never even contacted the police. He was a Gary Ridgway type guy. who didn't want. He was just keeping his shit private. He wanted the bodies to be found. He wanted to be famous. He was probably a guy like Charles Rader, or what's his name? Rader, fucking
Dennis Rader.
Dennis Rader, BTK. He's probably like a BTK, kind of a large.
I thought.
Is it back?
No, it's orange.
Okay.
Okay, it says it reconnected. Let's see if it's green.
Is it green?
I don't know. I can't see it. The thing's in the way. Okay, now it's green.
It's green. Okay.
Because when the thing pops up, I can't see it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm back over here too. Yeah, I was just saying that a lot of the theories about the Ripper are just fanciful theories. The chances are he's just some country guy who had good skills and was intelligent and didn't like women, and especially he didn't like hag prostitutes, and he was taking out vengeance on them. I think it looked like vengeance crimes. He hated them.
Yeah, that's what Bryce just said. I think Jack the Ripper was misogynist.
Yeah, he hated
big time
because he defaced him so badly. He wasn't just a pervert; he fucking hated them.
Yeah, like you said, he cut their faces up.
Yeah.
He cut out all their sexual organs. Yeah. He did shit like that. So obviously,
he may have gotten some kind of STD from prostitutes, and maybe he might have had syphilis and was dying. You don't know. And said, "Fuck it, I'm gonna take these. They did it to me. I'm gonna take them out." Might have been something like that.
I mean, that does sound like more. That sounds like.
Yeah, he hated them. So, and he may have known them too. That's another thing, maybe. Or maybe not. Could have just been random. He had a type that he looked for. Old hag prostitutes. That's mostly who they were. I don't think that one was a hag. A couple of them weren't, but they tended to be just hags.
Well, they were like older. Well, some of them weren't that old, but they were like alcoholics and stuff, so they look kind of rough.
Yeah, you see photographs of them, you're like, they look like they're in their 70s.
Yeah.
Like a bad 70s. They got hot fucking women in their 70s. Go look at fucking Cassandra Peterson. One girl who plays Elvira. Was he 75 or something? 74? That woman's fucking gorgeous. You can be old and be good looking, but those good women just look like fucking hags at fucking 40.
I said, they had a rough life, so cut them some slack.
Yeah.
And they got murdered in like the worst way imaginable. Well, yeah, if you go to like a Jack the Ripper site, they're like, and look at like the suspect thing, there's like 40 bajillion fucking suspects.
Yeah.
You can't even read through all that
stuff.
stuff.
He was just some kind of guy. If you saw him, you go, yeah, that's him. But he was probably kind of unassuming. In the way Dennis Rader was kind of unassuming.
Yeah, you wouldn't suspect because he just looked like a nobody, you know?
Yeah. Or a functionary. Like he belonged there, just walking around. Dog catcher.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mrs. Evans Artie Party, which is one of my favorite screen names.
Yeah.
This show is sad but fascinating. Thanks for keeping me entertained while I do chores. It's like I know this is fucked up, but it's like I was kind of excited to do this show because I've been wanting to do a show about Amelia Dyer for like a really long time. But then like the more documentaries I watch about it, I'm like, wow, this is like really depressing. And I don't usually get like that. But I don't know, for some reason this one like really bummed me out. I guess because I've been watching like shit about it for 3 days, and they did if you ever seen the British show Murder Maps, which is really, really good, they talk about like a lot of Victorian crime and stuff like that. They did a really good show about this one. But yes, there's a couple good like documentaries about it, but Murder Maps was the best one. All right, so I guess we're gonna wrap it up because it's getting late. It's past 10 o'clock, and I gotta get up real early tomorrow as usual.
Weekend will be here soon.
I know. At least it's Thursday.
Friday will be here soon. You come home and work, and then you would chill out, and then
Yeah, then I can chill out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna chill out for a little.
Naughty.
Oh.
Okay. What's going on this weekend?
Yeah, we'll think.
When's Memento Mori happening next?
Ooh, it might. Oh shit, it might be this Friday. Now that I'm thinking about it.
We'll see. Good.
I mean, you have to look it up because I just saw something about it, and I was just kind of like, oh shit, that might be this Friday again.
Yeah.
So we might, and I don't think we went to the last one, did we? Did we go to the last one?
We haven't been in a while.
Yeah, we missed it, so we should probably go to this one.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna wrap it up for the evening. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the show, even though it was a super depressing topic, but it was interesting anyway. So hopefully, you guys found it interesting.
Well, it's good that shit ain't happening anymore.
Well, that we know of.
Yeah. Not at that scale.
Not at that scale.
And
no.
Not in the Western world.
And these bitches are both dead, so that's something. So we will be back Friday night as usual for the Sidetrack show. So hopefully you guys can join us for that, and hopefully we'll see you all then. And have a good rest of your night, you guys.